Town Council. First order of business is roll call. Tiffany.
Michael.
Here.
Dwayne.
Yes.
Janet.
Here.
Roman.
Here.
Steve.
Here.
Ellen.
Present.
Mayor Kiffin.
Yes. Next item is public comment. And Tiffany, did you have something you wanted to say about public comment?
So if you're in the room, I've got two public comment sign-in sheets, one for general public comment, one for 740 Gothic. If you're online, if you can put your name in the chat, and if you're here for general public comment or public comment regarding 740 Gothic, that would be appreciated. Okay, Nicholas.
Okay, with that, so the reason Tiffany is parsing those out is that the first public comment is general public comment, and so citizens may make comments on items not scheduled on the agenda. Per Colorado open meetings law, no council discussion or action will take place until a later date if necessary. You must sign in with the town clerk before speaking. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. So is there anyone here in the audience in person for public comment? You can step to the podium, state your name.
And I'll give you a 1 minute warning. You got 3 minutes. I'll give you a one more and
I shouldn't need 3.
okay.
I hope not. My name is Mike Arbany, and I'm here to represent the Colorado 500. And as you guys probably know, the Colorado 500 has been coming through Crest of Butte for numerous years. They started their charity dirt bike ride back in 1974. And they first started doing scholarships in 1993. And I grew up in Basalt, and I graduated in 1995, so I got the third scholarship from them. And I wasn't even planning on going to college. Without them, you know, it drastically altered the course of my life and allowed me to go to college. And now the Colorado 500, they always used to start in Basalt, and now they're kind of like they've morphed to like the last couple of years. They've like started the ride in Crested Butte. And all the riders stay in not Crested Butte and everything. And so now within the last couple of years, we started a scholarship that is in Crested Butte. For years and years and years, they've donated money to the schools and everything else. But just recently, we started doing scholarships for kids in Crested Butte Community School. Since they started in '93 with the scholarship program, they've given out 122 scholarships, totaling over $900,000, and which I think is pretty amazing. And you know, we're here kind of to talk about the admissions tax, and we kind of didn't even know it was a thing, and kind of got blindsided. Weren't able to apply for a grant because we're a little late, or we didn't even know about it until after the grant process. The Colorado 500 is giving back to the community, to Crested Butte, and in all sorts of different ways. And then, you know, some of the countless ways that they give back, just out of 122 kids, you just never know who's going to end up in Crested Butte and giving back to this community as well. But anyway, to talk more about money side of things with is Janet Lohman, so I'll let her talk now. Thanks.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us. My name's Janet Lohman, and I'm the President and Executive Director.
Hi, Janet. I'm sorry. We usually do people in the room first, but since you've already started and since they're related, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, well, I've been with the Colorado 500 25 of the 40 plus years. We've been coming to Crested Butte annually, and I trust you all had time to read the letter of concern that we had regarding the admission tax. It came to us by surprise a month ago, well after our planning, which takes place a year in advance, and it raised concerns for our fundraising and for the health of our charity event. To charge a 4% tax on our entry fees paid means that we'd be paying over a 33% tax, you know, towards food and lodging to Crested Butte, which is above what we pay for, you know, food and lodging. So we had to ask our riders in our registration line, to pay up an extra fee as they go through the line. It really diminishes our fundraising efforts. It just seems like it would take away our purpose of our planned donations to Crested Butte, which this year is $13,000. The admission tax, just a rough figure, the math on my end would come close to $18,000, which really poses a problem for us. It would seem more fair if you were to charge admission tax towards our event to be based on after the food and lodging is paid and deducting the days we're not in Crested Butte, as we're only there for 4 days of our event. So we spend 2 days in Uray. And I understand the nice offer that you guys have for offering a grant, but we're obviously too late to apply for that. I don't know if you would take it into consideration to just change the fee structure, even if it's a flat fee based on per person or per parking, or, we basically, everything in our event is handled in the Woodbridge Conference Center and at the hotel parking lot, and the only town lot we use is just our overflow parking in the town lot. So I really appreciate any consideration you have. And in the meantime, we have looked at some other potential locations. We just have to keep this great charity going. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay.
We've got a Ben Cheatwood online for public comment.
Okay, is there anyone else in the audience for public comment, here in person for public comment?
General or?
I'm sorry,
General or
general, general,
Not associated with the public.
yeah, general, okay. So, Ben,
Yes, and my name is Ben Cheatwood. I've been coming to the Colorado 500 for 34 years. At one time, we had a couple events a year. And every one of those years, I came to Crested Butte at least once during my stay in Colorado. We relocated the ride from Basalt Aspen area because of the complications in Basalt and Aspen, trying to put the ride on in an area that was getting much busier. Hotel rates were getting pretty bad. So we moved it to Crested Butte, make it a better situation for our riders. We've enjoyed being at Crested Butte. The parking has been great. We've been able to have our activities and distribute some money in Crested Butte and other communities within Colorado. Currently we're putting money to work in Basalt, in Crested Butte, Gunnison, Lake City, Uray, and Silverton. And we just installed as Mike said, the scholarship program in Crested Butte 2 years ago. Some of the things we're facing now when we come into Crested Butte, it looks like we've got more permits, more regulations, and we've only got one employee that actually works full-time for the Colorado 500, and that's Janet Lohman. The rest of us are volunteers. I come out a couple months in advance to do site planning every year. It's getting to be pretty expensive for us to try to put this event on. We just recently had an increase because of the cost of putting on the event, housing, food support. We provide medics. We have people go out and help get people back off the trail and get them back to our base. We have a couple other concerns about Crested Butte. One is the distance to the closest hospital, which is in Gunnison, and the level 1 trauma center in Grand Junction, which we've had to use in the past. Makes it a little bit different, some of our planning. So we're looking ahead in the future on how we can better have this ride and still service the communities that we like to go to. Our total level of contributions is over $100,000 now, and we've made it a point to try to get more money into the pot every year and expand our base of donations. Our scholarships start out at 1 per year. And this last year, we gave out 7 scholarships in 3 different localities. So in closing, I just hope you can give us some consideration on our fundraising efforts and what we're trying to do in all the communities we visit in Colorado. We love being in Crested Butte. We'd like to come back, and just hope you can work with us a little bit closer. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else online for public comment? I'm just gonna say, no judgment or anything like that, but just to avoid confusion, we are the town of Mount Crested Butte. And so a lot of references to Crested Butte, and I know if you don't live here, it's a harder distinction to make, but we are a separate town, Mount Crested Butte. And so when you're referencing us, you're not Crested Butte. We're not Crested Butte. All right, last call for public comment. Anyone else for public comment? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Consent agenda that includes the special meeting minutes, the regular council meeting minutes, and the resolution of attendance series 2023 and staff report.
Motion from Janet and a second from Dwayne to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Heard none, Tiffany?
Roman,
Yes.
Janet.
Yes.
Steve.
Yep.
Dwayne.
Yes.
Michael.
Yep.
Alex.
Yes.
Mayor Kimpton.
Yes. Next item is correspondence. And I think we had some late correspondence, but we don't have anything that's in the packet. Is that correct, Tiffany?
There is no correspondence in the packet. There is a couple of things that came in this weekend as well as this morning. The letter from Colorado 500 regarding emissions tax, an email she wanted me to include regarding a special event liquor license. And then a letter from Andrew Orrell regarding the energy code adoption.
Our mayor pointed out the letter from Colorado 500 was addressed to the town of Crested Butte. It was not actually addressed to us.
Okay.
They got the letter physically?
No, it was sent to us.
Okay, so we have department heads here tonight. Thank you all for being here. And as such, we have you early in the agenda. And so we will start that off. First one is community development.
Great, thank you. Good evening, counselors. Neil Starchabon, Community Development Director. We'll kind of work through this report. I first want to say Community Development Department is extremely busy. I was really surprised just how much activity is going on in the Community Development Department, both between building and plan, as well as capital projects management. We want to recognize our staff in the Community Development Department, including we have Justin Sato and Todd Carroll, who are community development coordinators, and Jeff Smith, who is our capital projects manager. We do yeoman's work. We don't mind the report. They're just a great staff. So this will start off by talking about building and just some numbers. Permits this year, as well as inspections, are running about along the same lines as 2022. You can see with the valuation of permits issued so far this year, the town has collected a bit over 630,000. Maybe as we go through any questions relative to that information, we'd like to comment.
Wish I had a fireplace installment business.
Yeah, we do get a lot of both remodel, fireplace and roof permits.
Those are just retrofits. People have old fireplace.
A lot of them. They're just like this. Moving along, talk about some of the application and project updates. I think the biggest thing for us, our planner 2 position. Shannon Hessler did accept the planner 2 position and will be starting July 10th. Seems like she has a lot of energy to bring to the town. She has a master's from Western and program, and has done some intern work with us. Shannon Hessler. She actually lives up here on, so that's benefit. For location. And I think I said she starts July 10th, so we're looking forward to getting her on board. Community strategy, planning strategies, they continue their review of the village, Mount Crested Butte, the Nordic Inn, and the Upper Prospect applications. Those are moving forward. Hinder Ridge has submitted, they're under final review for both subdivision and annexation. As well as, probably familiar with the old Nevada Ridge PUD. We do have a sketch plan in the offing for what's now being called Crested Butte Ridge. So we'll be working on those projects as they move forward. Kind of moving into the town capital project updates. The most recent one, like, this just kind of highlights. If there's anything specific you'd like to discuss, but these are kind of the high points of the report. We had a real situation occur up on Cinnamon Mountain Road with the spring runoff and a blockage of some drainage. A lot of road repairs were implemented based upon that. There was some great coordination between the maintenance department, community development, getting that taken care of. And I think the project with the resourcing turned out extremely well, and helped the property owners up Cinnamon Mountain are happy with the work done by the town and our contractor.
I do have one question back on the projects, the Avalanche building. And they're just now doing architectural drawings, so obviously not gonna be open this summer.
Things did not sound very optimistic even for this ski season.
But they're shooting for winter,
That's
24.
huh?
not this season.
They shifted, what they told us is they had designs and then they shifted just recently of what they were going to do. And best case scenario is 2024.
Does the concept change?
We didn't get into too much detail, so, I mean, it's still a restaurant. But, so that's all I really know. What shifted from what they were planning for right now till now. I mean, it's an older building. So the more you dig into those buildings, the more you have to do. So by concept, I don't know what you mean. I didn't mean to be come across, I don't know, any certain way with that. But all I know is that they're still planning to keep it as a restaurant. I think we did a liquor license or something for an Italian restaurant back then. So maybe that was what your question. I think based on our conversations, that's probably what you meant. Yeah. I'm just not. I don't think that's the same person that's involved. I don't know if they're out, but what I gathered from that conversation is that concept may be changing. Sorry for my misunderstanding.
So moving into capital projects, there's an awful lot going on this side. Town signage and wayfinding project is in phase 1. I know town staff met with the contractor here this week, finalizing the contract services. Hopefully that's going to get up and running here real soon. And maybe Marissa will be talking a little bit about the wayfinding project. It's really exciting, something town's really looking forward to getting that. We did meet with consultants from Walker Consultants. They're doing the town hall building assessment. They came and met with staff, did a lot of walkarounds through the building, taking a look at the existing set of circumstances, and hopefully we'll have that report sometime in mid-July. Just might be aware the new doors have been fabricated and installed on the town pavilion. Haven't been by it, stop in and take a look, looks great. Pavilion will be closed off again, rather than curtains over there. Those doors are really nice. And I know this is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, the town tennis court resurfacing pickleball court. Marking is coming up here within the next week or two, depending on weather or temperature, but hopefully we'll get those resurfaced. I know there's a lot of demand. So I think that kind of covers it. I want to be as concise. We have a lot of reports. Any questions?
Just a couple questions and comments. First of all, I appreciate staff going after some money that's floating out there. And appreciate that diligence. And then I did have a question about the project update on the Upper Prospect PUD. Is that the one at the top of Goldwood? Is that what we were talking about?
Well, yes, but the stuff, it's the Upper Prospect, so it's the E and F lots. You did sketch plan, subdivision sketch plan approval over the last few months. So it's the single family lots above what's already platted, so more or less in the area where the road ends. Past Ring Fox to where the road ends is this portion. So parts of this PUD are not the stuff at the top of Goldwood or at the base of Goldwood, but those are long-term part of it as well. But this particular application is just for these unplatted single family.
But is CPS LLC going to continue through the entire review process for everything that's currently onboarded, even as community development gets all these positions fulfilled?
We have them on to see through Upper Prospect, North Village, or the villages in Mount CD, formerly North Village, and Nordic. They will see those three projects. That's their finish of reserves.
And without getting into any sort of details, because I know some of those are still pending, but is that relationship with them going okay?
I think so. TJ Bulick, who's the principal with CSP. Yeah, it seems to be definitely meet. Has been working with the applicants.
Great. They did have a change with their
And
plan.
that's primarily why I was asking,
Yeah.
just to make sure that that's all still.
And one more thing with the town hall assessment, I know the report's expected in July, but any sort of initial feeling from them, like? Or
They're really surprised the number of mice and the number of snakes we had listed this spring. Tally board. Downstairs, so I don't know if they didn't make.
The early, from what I heard from Jeff, was that it wasn't a tear down. It's something they could work with. So it was favorable.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was in decent, really was in decent shape.
I guess that's just.
I was just gonna say, it should be one or the other.
Yeah, it should be one or the
have
other.
snakes and mice, you should have one or the other.
I thought they brought in the snakes to get rid of the mice, but before you bring in that.
Yeah.
I have to admit, every time I visit a new town hall, I got something more that I want to add added to mine. My list is growing.
Okay, anything else for Neil and community development? Great, thank you. Thank you. All right, next is finance. Carl.
Well, all our funds are in really good shape right now. You know, our main revenue is our sales tax.
Speak to the microphone.
Oh. Yeah, so anyway, all our funds are in really good shape right now. Sales tax revenue, our biggest revenue, last year we were up 33%. I think we'll be up this year, we're up 6,000, which was surprising. We're flat in March. I'm surprised that April was a little bit higher than last year with the skier being closing like a week earlier, but I mean, we could have doubled that if it's still. And this summer, and then our building revenues, of course, like Neil said, we're gonna be above budget again. Last year we brought in like 1.9, I don't expect that, but 600 million. In the general fund, we usually just budget for like 500,000. Then this summer, so we have budgeted about 540,000 to do road work, capital projects. We did have an unexpected $90,000 project on cinema, but we should see the bid on that probably this week. I don't know when it's scheduled. Done this summer. The manufacturer admissions tax, which is, this is good. We're flat last year. Last year was our biggest year ever. Yeah. And that's about it. Our housing fund, we currently have about 3.9 million. Spend some did budget to spend like 950,000. So you need to spend that by the end of the year. We still have like 1.4 million. Housing funds. That's about it. Is there any questions?
Excuse me for not being up to speed, but what settlement do we have coming up?
Homestead.
Oh, right. I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's for, if a project gets canceled, decide not to do it or something, do we refund building permit fees or anything like that?
Yeah, we can answer
I try to, but we do have it's codified, like use tax, is refundable. Pickup deposit is refundable, if nothing starts, it's refundable. And then your building permit fee, which is just part of your overall fee schedule, which in your impact fees are refunded, but the building permit fee and the plan check fees, if they're done within a certain period of time, I believe it's 100%, or maybe it's 80%. It's 80% if you do it within an allotted time. I don't know what that is, but after a certain period of time, it's
So like, certain phases have started, then certain things aren't refundable.
right. So if you have a single family home, you have a year. I don't know if these time stamps are accurate. You have a year to start the project. If you don't, within that year, if you ask for a refund, you get 80% of that building permit fee and plan check fee back. Use tax, cleanup deposit, impact fee, your housing fees, might be missing a fee or two, are refundable. After a certain period of time, so say after that year, if you haven't applied, then those building permit fees and plan check fees are kept.
I certainly see the cancellations only in the last couple of years.
There's only one that I can think of, and that is Bridges on Columbine.
Carl, I don't know how long ago it was where I believe TAP came out with a somewhat sour projection on visitation for this summer, but recently all of a sudden it's supposed to be rushing again. So does that affect how you look at the rest of the year?
No, what's been happening is like our retail and online sales have been really strong. So even if lodging revenues drop a little bit, we're still bringing in from other companies that has kept us well last year. Like in the future, even if we like have a recession, I actually, in my 5-year plan, budget to be down in sales tax revenue like next year. But our property tax revenues are gonna grow so much next year, that's an offset. Our property tax revenues next year will probably be about 45%.
Thanks.
anything else for Carl? All right, next is Parks.
How's it going?
Hi.
I guess, maybe it's been super. Things have gotten around. Keep doing that. Have the list of. Last month. Do you have any questions?
Questions for Parks? Yeah, I'd love the planters too. How are those finished or?
Some of them are, some of them are.
We're just putting our plants out for the first time, so.
Yeah, it is just finally dry.
Has anybody looked at, I haven't had a chance to look at the pavilion doors. Has anybody been over there to look at them? Cool. We'll look forward to seeing them and,
Some new ADA mats, connecting. pavilions and paths. The parking lot. too. Folks in strollers. wheelchairs.
great, adds to the whole thing, but also the wedding garden amenity, right?
Yes.
Cool.
And Tim also touch on the trail,
Which one?
the one, this one.
Yeah, last summer we put in this trail behind. This year, I think Rebecca's planning some kind of event associated. with it. Cool.
I just wanted to give kudos to Tim and his crew. I was amazed. I've only been here a couple months. Between when the snow started to quit. and I learned- I mean, it really amazed me, the amount of work that these guys got done. Part on the building, on the garden, and the time that they. was when it started, it was just.
Yeah, we tried to squeeze a little extra stuff. I think it's going well. A little stressful. We'll get there.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for the hard work. All right, next is police report. Chief Stepanik.
Hi, good evening. I'm Nate, from Mount Crescent Police Department, Police Chief. You see from my reports that we get every month. that we're watching these with people. I think Carlos added the sheriff's report this month. What comes from my office. We do that monthly. So the sheriff's department gets to see.
And others.
So the sheriff's department gets to see what services our town provides to the county. So if there's any question, try to answer.
I just have I don't know what it is, but what is a custodial?
You do get to go down to Gunnison.
Okay. So I asked this question when you guys weren't here while we had the former town manager. And she, I think the answer that to my question kind of got lost in translation. And that's the differentiation between the different types of traffic tickets. I get the municipal obviously within town limits, but what makes one a county ticket and one a state ticket?
Well, it's written the municipality stays here, but those are only for certain charges, which have to do with our model traffic codes. As they become more serious with model traffic code in town, we will switch to a state charge, say for DUI, because our municipal court can't handle that as a infraction. as far as- Here, now. So we'll switch to a state charge. happens in the county, we write a county ticket, state for speed. Best that infraction if being is DUI or something more serious, then we switch to the state charge. So,
Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Probably my question Nate would be able to answer as well.
Any other questions for the chief? Thank you very much. All right, next is maintenance.
Bobby is out, he's on vacation, so he we can have him. Intro to this, we wanted all the department heads to be, tonight, we had talked about this in the past, just to get familiar on both sides a little more so. And then if there are questions like that question, Janet, just ask that, you know, it's better directed to that department head. To get opportunity to do that. So we'll do this maybe once or twice a year. I think with this being the transition from spring to summer after this big winter, it gave us the opportunity to summarize the winter and spring while, you know, planning for the summer. So that's why everyone's here, but Bobby just wasn't.
So with that in mind, anybody have questions or comments for the maintenance report, understanding that Bobby's not here?
Not that it's maintenance of parks on the, I noticed up at Gothic, there's up at the Sun Restaurant, the new sign to say, like one sign will say, no parking overnight. The one right next to it will say, no overnight parking. And we just got different, and we look at different, it's like, not just pick one phrase.
that should make sure nobody's
And then I think
confused.
down here, down here, like the voting address. It says, no parking overnight. 2 words. It's no parking overnight, up there is 1 word, and the next 1 word. So, 3 different people are over my signs, but we should probably.
At least we can never figure out how to spell avalanche.
I wasn't gonna go there. Just doing all the E's that I had to get at.
That's a thought.
All right, anything else for maintenance?
Something like the word calendar.
Yeah.
Go back there.
Thank you.
Deal with that.
Yeah, totally. All right, anything else for maintenance? All right, next is marketing and events. Looks like we have Marissa. Hi, Marissa.
Everyone, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Sorry, I had an appointment this afternoon and that's why I'm not in person. But we are kind of rocking and ready to go for the summer, which is really exciting. There's a lot of events happening throughout town. Just this last weekend, we had the Melanin Mountain Project hosting their Juneteenth event, and we had Outspoken happening that was on Sunday night. And then Monday afternoon, we had Brothers of Brass that were playing up at the mountain, and both were pretty well attended. So I am just, as a reminder, you know, if you can attend any of the admissions tax grant events, that's great. It's good to have some of you there so you can see how those funds are being spent. But Rebecca and I typically are at those events. And so that was really exciting to have the first one for the summer kind of kicked off. Tomorrow is the start of our music series. So that's also very exciting. And then we have 4th of July next week, and then music the day after. So we are really busy, and everything's kind of going at full swing. Yoga starts next week as well. So we have a free yoga class at noon every Wednesdays, on each Wednesday. You know, our community cleanup was really successful that we had on Saturday, the 10th. We had a great turnout for that. And Rebecca's really working hard on all of the details around planning for the town picnic and Pickin' Food Truck and Fall Festival. So if you guys had any questions at all about the events portion of the report, I'm happy to answer. No?
Whatever is it, Steve, how are you?
Hey,
Question, hey, Sparkplug Entertainment, it looks like, I'm assuming they're a third-party vendor we're utilizing for marketing and outreach. Could you explain that? Is that falling outside of the sort of purview of your department?
yeah, so I think there's typically kind of a big misconception that, you know, we're responsible for Music on the Mountain, but it's really the TCCA. And all of the music comes from TCCA funding. And so this year, Krista Ryan actually has always been the one who has booked entertainment for music up here. And this year she took on the marketing piece of it. So that is who Sparkplug is. Just so you know.
ECCA is the Town Center Community Association.
Any other questions from Melissa?
Not on the events part.
What was that, Janet?
Not on the events part.
Okay. Great. Yeah, and then, you know, wayfinding, Neil touched on it a little bit. We have a lot of overlap with some stuff, but we had AdLight out here and last week, and we met actually with a few other people, GCEA, Gunnison County Electric, and CBMR and a few other people just to kind of go over the sign locations and the scope of work. So right now they're working on the finalization of the scope of the project and the cost, and we should know more by the end of this week. Jeff and I are working closely together on that. Any questions about wayfinding particularly? Okay. And then as you guys have already discussed, the Wedding Garden and Park, you know, the Parks Department just did a really amazing job, and their team worked so hard to get everything ready. We had our first wedding on the 10th and it was in great shape. The spaces, you know, so we're prepping for a really busy summer. We have nearly 100 weddings booked for the entire summer, and July, there's about 4 days that the space is not being utilized or rented out. The banners, so we have banners that are going up Gothic, and this might be in somebody else's report too, but we're working on getting those installed. That work will be done actually this weekend. Sorry, when I was writing the report, it was next weekend, but it's actually this weekend that those banners should be up and going. And then some of this, oh yeah.
Asked about was that I'm really glad to see that the banners are going to be redone, because I've had a lot of constituents comment on how sad that other ones look. What are these new banners going to look like?
What are they going to look like?
Yeah.
Well, they're a mixture of winter and summer photos. So, and we have our logo and CBMR's logo, and it's rotating every other. But they're really beautiful. I actually have them over by my space. And if you guys want some examples, I can just email what they look like, but they're really, really cool. I'm really happy how they turned out. So, yeah, yep. And then just as far as, you know, swag, it's like a continuous thing of things being ordered and figuring out what's working best for each department. And you guys should be having some of your stuff is kind of trickling in. So, yeah. It's all exciting. That's all I have for you guys this evening.
Marissa, I grabbed the banners and I'm passing around a.
Oh, great.
And I'm not pulling out the full banner, but there is an example of what one will look like.
Oh, okay. Thanks,
Rotate
Stephanie.
Mars
Yeah.
logo and the Crest Buttes logo.
All right, that photo's being passed around. Any other questions for Marissa? Thanks, Marissa.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a good night.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the public hearing. An application for rezoning 740 Gothic Road, Mount Crested Butte, Colorado, Lot 4, Block E, Chalet Village Edition Number 2, submitted by Stephanie and Brandon Giles, represented by Huckstep Law LLC. The application is to rezone the property from single-family zoning district to the low-density multiple-family zoning district. And so we're gonna have Leah introduce it, or move right to the public hearing?
I think, well, we're in the public hearing now, and I think the first part of the public hearing is the staff.
Well, here, let me do the, I gotta, yep. All right, so today is Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. And the time is 6:46 PM. I'm now opening the public hearing for the 740 Gothic Road rezoning application. Submitted by Stephanie and Brandon Giles, represented by Huckstep Law. We are holding this public hearing in person and via Zoom. The following members of the Mount Crested Butte Town Council are in attendance: Michael Bacani, Dwayne Leonards, Janet Farmer, Roman Pelleggi, Steve Morris, Alec Lindeman, and myself, Mayor Nicholas Kempen. We're also joined by the following: Town Manager Carlos Villado, Town Clerk Tiffany O'Connell, Town Attorney Gerald Dahl, Community Development Coordinator Leah Desposato, and Community Development Director Neil Starkbaum. So we are here to receive public input on a rezoning application for rezoning for 740 Gothic Road from single-family residential to low-density multiple family. So Leah, was this public hearing properly noticed?
Yes, this hearing notice was published in the CD News on June 2nd, 2023. And posted in the required locations. The applicant also sent the certified mail public notices to the required properties by the Friday 2nd deadline, and provided the copies of certified mail receipts.
All right. And I know we had some letters in the council packet. Are there any other written comments that we should know about?
We haven't received any additional.
Okay. All right. So Leah, staff overview.
Yes. So Stephanie and Brandon Giles are represented by Aaron Huckstep of Huckstep Law. They are the owners of 740 Gothic Road. Brandon and Huck are here just tonight. The lot is currently zoned single-family residential, and there's an existing A-frame single-family home on the lot. It's kind of across the way from Marcelino Lane. The applicant is requesting to rezone the lot to LDMF for low-density multifamily. As a part of this review, staff and planning commission approached the application as a site-specific development plan. And because of that, the applicant provided additional items as part of their application, including 2 600 square foot on-site community housing units with garages, along with the community housing plan and the restriction document, which were reviewed by the housing authority and the town attorney. A letter from the Crested Fire Protection District regarding access, and site plan and survey maps. The applicant is specifically proposing 4 total structures, 3 single-family unrestricted and 1 2-family dwelling, with both units being deed restricted. By providing 2 deed restricted units, the applicant would exceed the required 0.5 units or over 3 times the required dwelling unit housing. The planning commission made a conditional recommendation of approval to the town council during their January 2022. They held a public hearing late 2021 and approval early 2022. One of the conditions was regarding, or some of the conditions were regarding access, and if it changed, the plan would need to come back to the planning commission for review. That did end up happening. The original proposed access was off of Pinnacle Drive, and they moved it to off of County Road directly. So an additional public hearing ran February 22nd of 2023. And the planning commission approved a motion to amend their 2022 motion on the items regarding access. Make sure that's clear what happened. So during their review and motion, the PC was concerned about setting precedents. So they did include items in their approval criteria and findings to address those concerns. And as far as process goes, the town council are holding a public hearing tonight on this application and shall consider the public comment in their decision. If the rezoning application is approved, the town council would proceed with the adoption of an ordinance amending the official zoning map to designate a new zoning, the new zoning district. And of course, a design review would go before the planning commission for review.
All right, thank you, Leah. Next part of the process is applicant comments. So
Give me a minute. Is it on this server?
I can,
If you can get in and share your screen, you got it. That might be all.
Readers have.
it's gonna take us forever to rely on that.
Wait, here we go. I think I got it. What do you want me to go to?
Site plan, which is exhibit E. Would be the best place to go. If you could go to the next page. Probably, actually, the third page would be great. This project has been in process for quite a long time. What we initially attempted to do was come to the planning commission and request a rezoning of a single family residential lot. It's at 740 Gothic. It's just on the base area side of fire department, fire district's firehouse, on the opposite side of town. It has an A-frame, a very old A-frame that's been there for probably built in the 60s, I think. And it's, again, it's zoned single family residential, but as you look at the adjacent properties, they are either low density or high density, or they are used for pretty high intensity short-term rentals. So we view this from the perspective that, okay, well, we know that we don't want to just come to the town. We can't get the town and ask them just to rezone this property to one
occupancy multifamily without some kind of justification. We didn't know, we knew that. So we went to the planning commission and we said, well, all right, what we'd like to do here is we'd like to have 4 different structures, one of which will house 2 units of affordable housing. And as Leah indicated, that's 3 times as much as would be required under the plan itself as proposed. Now, the reason that this project has been in front of the town, or at least the planning commission for so long, is because of the change to the driveway. Leah mentioned that we initially proposed to use the quote unquote Pinnacles driveway. But we really, and I want you to refine that, it does have the Pinnacles driveway within the town's right of way. This property is adjacent to town right of way. I'll show you on the map. Right here in the lower right corner, you'll see town right of way. Okay. Initially, we assumed that the town would take the position that, sure, we have a right to use that town right of way to access the property itself. Once we received planning commission recommendation of approval, we spoke with the town's attorney, and we had some further conversations with the folks at the Pinnacles. Turns out they didn't like our idea, and the town attorney was not going to essentially defend the town's right to use or the town's right to control. Right now, in lieu of the escalate fight, we're pushing that issue. We said, you know, wait a second. We heard Dusty Jefferson make some comments at the planning commission. Let's go back and take a look at relocating the driveway to the middle of the site itself. So literally, I'm sure there are other things that changed on this plan, but I will tell you that the configuration of the structures, size of the structures, the programming of the structures, none of it changed. The only thing that really changed was instead of going out the lot on the southeast side into the town's right of way, connecting to what would have then been a shared driveway on Gothic Road, that was eliminated. And we put a new driveway right in the middle of the property. It took us quite a while to get feedback from the fire department. What we did, fire department said, hey, we really like this second configuration much better. And they have indicated on 2 occasions they have no concerns with respect to the driveway access. There have been these two planning commission public hearings on this particular matter. Gone through a lot of work to get to this point. These properties will look and feel the same across the 4 structures. Part of the discussion with the planning commission was what kind of amenities are we talking about with respect to housing units, are we going to have garages? Are we going to have storage, things like that? The answer is yes. We were able to work with the architect to figure out a way where those units can have enclosed parking. So we think this is a compelling basis to come forward to you all and ask for rezoning of a property that is single-family residential. It sticks out a little bit like it's a single-family residential. It's at the southern end of the single-family residential. Look at the zoning map. It is literally across the street from high density, just to the north, just to the west of other density, and the property above it, off of Whetstone Road, is used as effectively a very high volume. The planning commission likes this. It didn't approve, it didn't give us approval or recommendation for approval once, but twice. We think that this particular plan, as revised, is a good solution for everybody. It avoids, again, further conflict, further discussion about the town's right of way. And it provides the town with 2 built affordable housing units. A property that, given everything else, as you look at here, would only require less than half of the unit. 25 items. From our perspective, we think the application has merit. We're very happy to talk with you about it this evening. Any questions?
Well, so I think we're at public comment next. So Tiffany, just since we have people online and here in the room, I don't know if you have a list of who signed up first, but would you mind just letting these folks speak in whatever order you see fit?
Okay, and again, you have 3 minutes for public comment. I will give you a 1-minute warning. You can see me on Zoom once you're at 2 minutes, and then I'll cut you off at 3 minutes. First one is Jurgen.
Evening, Mayor and the council members. So my wife and I here, but I speak to regarding our opposition to this upzoning right across the street from us. I'm sorry, I had some notes here. So my wife and I family have been coming here for over 25 years. We purchased a property right across the street, Cottonwood Building of the Outlook. We made a sizable investment and not just the purchase 5 years ago, but some remodel. But we selected this location to find our permanent vacation home, a permanent retirement home, based on very much the views. We have the second story with the balcony, which is, by the way, right, the same elevation as the building currently with the new roof, the apron building. And of course, the amenities of our condominium and the character of the neighborhood, the immediate neighborhood that this location, this property is in. So, as far as the view is concerned, we were very concerned that the future construction where there would be empty lots, right? And multi high density zoning. Where we see that this is a single family residentially zoned property right across from us, right? Our view, a couple 100 feet from us. And we take that into consideration when we make our purchase. So we assume, I've worked in government for a long time, that zoning and then subsequent development on that property, or maybe the property, the building is at first, but that the zoning is a settled matter and not up to some choice of the current council or property owners need to take amendments to it. So we assumed that when we made our investment. Okay. So first of all, not only our view, I think that the view of all of our neighbors and the character of the neighborhood, which we still think is important, that there are single family residences right across from us and further up north. So it will change the views and the character of the neighborhood. Now, in terms of the environmental impact, it's not just our views, it's the fact that we have 4 more buildings, substantial asphalt, and we have
Time.
that was the time.
That was the time.
Ooh, that was good. All right, well, I made some points. Thank you.
You got 3 more minutes if you got a teammate.
Spectacular.
Daniel?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, Town Council. I'm Daniel Terrell, and I have owned property, my home at 720 Gothic, which is part of the Pinnacles development since 2009. And I'm expressing my personal opposition to the zoning change, and that is based on the developer's submitted plan. I believe its character, its appearance, and its density are not consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. For this relatively small property, 4 buildings, for 16 parking spaces, along with the dumpsters, are not appropriate for that location. My HOA neighbors and other neighbors have also expressed opposition to the rezoning, as you've seen in the packets. I especially asked the council to deny the rezoning. And as a personal note, for boards and other similar bodies that I have served on. What you do in terms of managers, counselors, mayor is a thankless job often. It's an outstanding job for Mount Crescent View and for property owners. So thank you.
Is there anyone else? Yes, what's your name?
Bruce
What's your last name, Bruce?
Watson, BAHNSEN,
What's your address?
15 West End.
Thank you.
Mayor, Council. I submitted a written letter, so I'll just go over a couple of the things in there that I want to make sure that I draw your attention to. And then one other thing that occurred to me while mountain biking this afternoon, as I was thinking about the project and so forth. And then I'll start with that since I didn't start it today, but you know, so one of the points was this was an ancient, you know, who knows how old it is, who knows why it was on single family. That was about 50 years ago when it was built. But, you know, I think it may have been intentional that, you know, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was a fluke or an accident or a coincidence, but here it is, 50 years. So we have a precedent, we have, you know, we have this history, this single family, and so we would like to keep it as it is. We're one of the 3 adjacent properties. So one of the things I called out in my letter was, you know, there's a cross Gothic, but that's in my thinking at least is a different world. It's high density, that's for sure. But there's exactly 3 that have adjacent borders to this property, and 2 out of the 3 are single family and have been since one since the 60s and one since the late 90s, which is ours. And a third, which we border as well as low density multifamily. So that's the ratio I'd like to call your attention to, and I'd like you to consider that that's a 2 out of 3, and that's one thing. And then the border, the boundary, which somebody else brought up, yes, it is the boundary. It has been the boundary. I included a picture from the late 1960s where you can see sort of high density to the south, and you can see where single family homes were taking root by the early to mid, even late 60s. So I think of that as a very established border. I don't consider it part of the base area. I also draw a line 2,500 feet to the base of the chairlift, however you want to define base area, but I think it's outside what most people would say. If you said meet me at the base area, you would go, it's pretty good. So it's outside the base area. It's not completely surrounded. It would certainly not be a the term, but a negligible, I think is the term, negligible impact, especially to our friends at 750. They're looking at a completely different landscape than what they bought into, and I think they will be highly impacted as well as people even across the Africa. That's really all I wanted to do. Thank you.
Elizabeth Johnson. Thank you for this. I also submitted a pretty long letter, and the previous letter, we're one of the, obviously, we do have a short-term rental, but as I said in the letter, we're here to half of the year. Our plan is to be here full time someday, and we bought our property 4 years ago, and we're here every second. We also have 2 children we want to pass on, as the guy stated in their letter. We feel it's appropriate for me to move our children in one house. I have a couple things I want to just point it out in the application submitted from October 6th, section G. It was said that the effect upon the character of the area in which the proposed rezoning is located, approval of application will not result in any negative impact on the character of the property or the adjacent area. So I definitely consider our home the adjacent area we're in, and 25 feet of this. The views from our neighbor's house at 750 Gothic, the Roberts who are on this call will be extracted. The character of the property will be drastically changed with the elimination of their view. Does this count? How about the noise from the construction, noise from more residents, light pollution, traffic issues? We look out, we see foxes, we see marmots, we see all sorts of little animals in this backyard. that's gonna be gone. Does this count as having a negative impact? We feel like our house might just cave in, we're right above it, we're concerned if there's gonna be a geotechnical study and slope stability assessment to see if that slope can even support this larger development. And our other neighbors at 17 Redstone, in their plans will have a dumpster directly underneath their hot tub. I can't say anything positive to say about co-mingling around a dumpster and a hot tub. It doesn't, it's not good. All of our privacy will be obviously affected negatively with more people within 20 feet of our property. We were also told when we bought our property that we could build another 35-foot tall house beside us. We have the field that outlooks, and we do have the room for that. We would have to share a driveway, and we've said there's no way we would want to build and expand our property more. I know, we know all of our neighbors. We know a lot of the locals. We know how much they appreciate that property and enjoy seeing that. So I feel it's really unfair to have bought a single family lot. They paid for a single family lot, knowing that, and that's what they should build on there. But I also said in the letter that they would be happy to just do a single family residence if the plan was not approved, and I would say, let's do that then. Thanks.
Anyone else in the room for public comment? Anyone, Doug, are you here for public comment on it?
Yes, we would. We were letting anybody else in the room finish up. If y'all are ready for a Zoom attendees, we are ready as well.
We are ready for you.
First of all, we really, really wish we could have been there in person. We have a family wedding reunion that we're traveling to in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan tomorrow. So that is our reason why this is the best we could do for tonight. I'll try to keep it as short and sweet. And once again, we're the Roberts. I'm Doug. This is Lisa. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary at our cabin that we've been working for our entire lives. We were lifties after college, and buying 750 Gothic was not something that we did on a whim. It was something that we woke up every day and worked our asses off for, excuse my language. But I just want everyone to understand that putting two 35-foot structures up against 15 feet from your driveway, that does change the landscape. No matter what the owner's attorney is trying to spin, your landscape is changed whenever you buy a single family residence in a single family community with views of the mountains that you've been dreaming about your entire life, only to find out that somebody wants to put up 4 35-foot tall structures within 15 feet of your driveway. So I think it's worth pointing out that I have yet to hear one other person who is supporting this project. Looking back on the notes from the city council says that to upzone or rezone a property, it needs to be exciting and transformative. And if this was really truly an exciting and transformative project, where's the support? The owners of the property have not shown up to a single meeting from what I can tell. I would love to just speak to them from one neighbor to another to understand why. Why would you want to build this project where everyone around you, not just the immediate neighbors, but the entire town of Mount Crested Butte, all of the feedback has been that nobody is looking for the community to be changed through upzoning. So sorry, I said I'd keep it short and sweet. We're very passionate about this property, about the town of Mount Crested Butte, about its natural beauty, and just watching a beautiful property just completely scraped underneath the Whetstone properties immediately next door to us to turn into a parking lot for up to 20 cars, dumpsters. We never thought we'd be on this call having to deal with this. We did have a wonderful attorney, David Leinsdorf, submitted letter that I hope you all will please reconsider and
Right.
just please do the right thing.
And is there anyone else online that would like to make public comment?
Okay, so next in the process is applicant's response to public comment.
First. I want to review a few of the comments. I think they help to pinpoint the focus of exactly why this request is in front of you. Let's start with Mr. Roberts. He's adjacent on the, if you will, uphill side, right? At 750 Goddard. He purchased that property from the Pearls Management that operates the North End. What do we think was going on with that particular property prior to this purchase? It was being used as a short-term rental. Very, very active business. I understand the desire and concern that we have about a half acre lot here that has an apron on it, had an apron on it since the 1960s. Some like to see that. Some like to lose, or they have a perception that construction activity is going to run the foxes out or the deer out. Or they're going to somehow mar the views that are literally adjacent to Gothic Road and as you're hearing from a topographical perspective, they are lower than the adjacent properties. Now, we all know what folks care about with respect to views in this community. They're not looking at Gothic Road. They're not looking at 60-year-old A-frames. That's not where their views are. I mentioned too that no one has a right to protection of views, even if that was a legitimate concern. That's an accused claim. Now, there's some discussion about noise and light and traffic as well. For those of you who have been here a long time, I'm pretty darn certain most of you have been here a long time. You know, the traffic flows on Gothic Road have changed, certainly in the last 25 years, certainly in the last 5 years. That is proven through traffic studies that you all have seen over the course of time. But that noise and light is not being generated by this particular project, or any of those impacts are not being generated by this particular project. They're being generated by the demand for folks coming to our community generally. With respect to a concern that a house might cave in on this property, I want to make sure everybody knows that the regulatory process in the town of Mount Crescent View requires a geotechnical report, and that will not happen. There were some discussions both with the planning commission and some of the comments I think Mr. Bond said about setting a precedent. We recognize that it is a difficult decision for both the planning commission and the town council to decide to allow a potential upzoning of property like this. It's exactly why we focus the application on establishing a very high precedent for the provision of affordable housing that came with that particular rezoning. So I don't look at this as just opening the doors to eliminating a precedent related to upzoning. I view it as we're setting a precedent that says if you have a compelling reason to come upzone the property, then you better be thinking about bringing at least 3 times the amount of affordable housing to the table, and you better build it. That's the precedent that was set with respect to the planning commission's recommendations to set up this property. Interestingly, Daniel from the Pinnacles talked about density being a problem. Size of this lot, the acreage of this lot is the same size as the Pinnacles. The Pinnacles has 4 buildings. But that excludes the town's right of way. It gives you an idea of what we view as we've got to dig into these issues to Get to the bottom of what's written. Now, character of the neighborhood. You're gonna brought that up, and I do wanna share, give me if I can, I'm gonna share my screen. Now, this is an image of the site itself. Gothic Road is running right from top to bottom in this image. And what you see are 721 Gothic, HDMF, 721 Gothic, HDMF, 721 Gothic, HDMF. There's a discussion about, or characterization, that across Gothic is an entirely different world. Mount Crested Butte is too small to have an entirely different world. As you look at these properties here, this is the subject property here. We have LDMF in orange, LDMF, and then this brown is another HDMF. And then we have another LDMF up the road, further up the road. So, has the character of our community changed across that 25 years, 25, 30 years that some individuals have been living in this community? You bet it has. You bet it has. And we all know that across that time, especially in the last 5 years, housing has become a massive, massive issue. You all know this with firsthand experience with respect to the Homestead project. Prospect, how difficult it is to get built and delivered to the town. It's exactly what we are trying to do today. That's exactly why we came to you all to ask for rezoning of this property. Again, I want to ask you all to consider with an open mind the fact that this will, for all practical purposes, this is not going to change for me. It already is. What it will do is bring more affordable housing to this particular lot and the community as a whole. That's all.
Thank you, Huck. So next part is town council questions and answers with the applicant. So Janet has a question. Janet, want to start us off?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm clear on the timing of what's happened and what we're being asked to do tonight. And that is that my understanding is that the planning commission did the initial approval of the upzoning change with the road to entrance condition back before we approved our master plan. And then what they did a couple weeks ago was just approving the entrance. And that there wasn't anything about the upzoning, that had already been done, but back in 22 or something. And so tonight, though, we're being asked to go back kind of to square one and consider the zoning change.
Yeah, I'll try and characterize that and certainly let your staff weigh in.
Client's not even said yes.
My client has not even said yes, so I want to give just a little more detail. But basically, yes, I will say, Janet, the discussion with the planning commission did not happen just a couple weeks ago. It was quite a while ago. So one of those initial conditions on their part was, hey, look, if you're going to change the access, then come back to us. I will tell you, we grappled with that. The change is not, in my opinion, not that material. We're just shifting the driveway around. Nothing's really changed. We have to go back to the planning commission.
But we're
We
back
ultimately,
at the upzoning question.
that's correct. We ultimately, this property doesn't get upzoned without you all's approval.
That is not done before us. Yeah. This is the first time we're hearing this.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had a preliminary, what's that?
Concept review.
We had a concept review, and that's all, yeah.
Again, that was before the master plan was approved.
How you mentioned if you guys come in without a bunch of other gravy on top of this, you don't think that we would have said no? What would we have said no to originally?
That's a great question.
Is this like, and I guess what I'm gonna get at are the emotional players in this, right? One is the STR neighbor and the other is the affordable housing.
Yep.
We know that both of those always come up depending on which way we're trying to sway council. And I'm wondering what that looks like.
Good question. And so what I was referring to is, let me pull up the, site planning.
I think we were at 750 Gothic that you were referring to as an STR first. Correct?
The Bonsons as well. So we have two properties that are adjacent, that's sort of on the ground at the top, and this property, they're both short term. They have been short term. What the neighbors said, maybe not on this property right now, I don't know. What would we have proposed? We wouldn't have proposed anything. I mean, truly, I will tell you that without disclosing any confidences here, there's never been a plan. When Brandon and his wife first came to me, we were talking about what's possible on this particular lot. And my very clear advice to them was, we're not gonna go to this council, we're not gonna go to the town, planning commission, council, whoever, even staff, and be able to ask for an upzoning unless you seriously consider what you want to do with respect to housing. It's going to be an issue. So let's just say for the sake of argument, that we were coming to you and saying, okay, we want an upzoning, we want all four of these units to be free market lots, free market properties. I can't imagine that you all would say yes to that. I have a hard time believing you would say yes to that, right? So that again, I want to make sure you all are clear. I want to make sure I'm answering the question. That was never on the table. It's never an application. It's never part of an application. We knew that going in, what we were talking about doesn't happen every day. And we knew going in that we would have to address it in some way to make all sense.
Of course. In your conversations with your client, does your client believe that zoning is a promise between municipality and property owner?
I have never asked my client that, but I will say this, if he were to ask me, what I would tell him was zoning is a concept, right, that we start with. And I guess I would go back to the philosophy that you gotta plan your work and you work your plan. Zoning is nothing more than a plan. You make a plan. And at the time that the zoning code was actually implemented and adopted in the town of Mount Crescent, the residential structure that you see on this line is already in existence. So what's the de facto zoning going to be for a property, for a lot that already has a residential unit on it? It's probably going to be single family residential. That's not too complicated, right? But when you think about the way zoning works across any community, doesn't matter if it's Mount Crested Butte or it's Crested Butte or it's Gunnison or it's somewhere in the Front Range or even in junction with Poncho. No matter where it's at, people come in and ask for revisions or reconsideration of zoning on a very frequent basis. It's not like it happens every single day. Certainly respect the fact that the plan is a plan, and as conditions change on the ground, zoning is always subject to change. And I would say, Neil's got plenty of experience. He probably will tell you about that. Jerry certainly too. We've got plenty of experience with this, making sure that the schools as well.
Affordable housing be the emerging change that justifies this rezoning from your perspective? Something must be a catalyst for your client to believe that that now's the time. Right?
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily just affordable housing. When you look at what is going on in our community, in my community, I want to make sure you all know, I don't live in Mount Crested Butte, I think you all know that, but I consider community greater other value. When you look at what is happening in our community, I think there are issues, community issues that you all struggle with from a regulatory perspective as well. You don't necessarily have to do with housing, but let's just take, for instance, those two, there's a anecdotal evidence, if you will, that the proliferation of short-term rentals really has decimated the opportunities for folks to live here. It's priced out homes, and it's pushed a conversion of long-term rentals into short-term rentals for economic reasons. Okay. So as you look at that, and as you look at that particular issue itself, what it's also done is change the look and feel, the character of what would be single-family residential zones and turn them into an area where you do have high crime. So that distinction, that dividing line between what is a single-family residential zone, what's a low-density multifamily zone, right, is blurred. Okay. When we look at the master plan, you all went through too, I think you all even sent out a questionnaire or at least some notice to neighbors within the last couple of years saying, hey, we're thinking about substantially changing sort of boundary lines, right, of what is available in a single-family residential zone. That right there is an indicator that the community has changed. So is this particular program driven by affordable housing? Right? Not on its own, no. But the fact is that when you look at the way that the community has changed from single family, in that single family residential zone, we just don't see that much difference with respect to the way the zones were used. So if that's going to be the way that things work, why not get some housing along the way? Does that make sense?
Anybody else have questions for the applicant? You got any more?
Oh, go ahead.
Where, in reference to changing the character of the neighborhood, where are you defining the boundary of that neighborhood relative to those impacts?
I also had a question too. Your diagram is just that section, but if we looked up, then it would be all yellow up above, right? I mean, it doesn't really. That's not, I see what you're doing with the color coding, but with just that square, it doesn't really show the giant patch of yellow above it.
Yeah, I think if you look at the zoning map over here, you can look at properties right there. So maybe this gives a better indication of it's just for our record, I'm pointing to the Mount Crescent View zoning districts 2012. Here on the map on the right in the council. So you're right, everything north is this light green or yellow on ours. Everything south is ident, and it literally shifts from low density to high density. And it's all within that base area. It doesn't go back to single family residential all the way to the end of all the way to the southern boundary of the town. So I think, you know, one of the discussion points we had with the planning commission was this is not a single family residential lot that's sitting within that sea of single family to the north, right? It's right there on that boundary. So what do I consider the character of the neighborhood?
Oh, just the boundary of it. So I think we all, it can be a bit opinion based on where do we feel.
Sure.
What is disruptive? Like you could say, well, there won't be any light pollution impact. It feels incredibly dismissive to read that and knowing this property and thinking you're gonna add 14 cars, 4 structures, exterior lighting, 16 cars, whatever. All of those cars coming in and out, fixed structures with mandatory compliant lighting required, like that statement feels very false to me. It feels dismissive of some of the concerns of the homeowners that are going to be impacted directly by that.
Sure, and I want to make sure that you all hear this loud. My intention is not to be dismissive. My comparison is, you know, when I think about those impacts, they will exist one way or the other. And that's a better way to say it. Maybe there will be less cars. Maybe there will be less trips in and trips out, right? But one way or the other, that property, you all know that given what that A-frame looks like, you may not have been inside of it, but if you go inside of it, you're gonna know really quick. Someone who buys that property does not buy it with the mind of, I'm gonna go in and preserve this really old A-frame. Right? It is a redevelopment parcel. That's the bottom line. So the question here is really, what does that redevelopment look like? Does it look like what we're proposing? What does it look like, single family residential home, or potentially more than that, given the parcel size, we're talking about an ADU? And when you start thinking about those particular aspects of it, the distinction between what's being proposed and what actually could be done on there as a use by right, they're not, in my opinion, and I certainly understand that folks question this, they're not they're not all that far apart. So the plan is, as Brandon and I talked this evening, the plan is, of those 4 structures, he and his wife will be using one of them. Much like the neighbors at 750 Gothic, they want to be here as much as they can, but they're not going to be here full time. One of them is going to be long-term rented, okay? Which means you do have folks living within the community, they're there on a regular basis. The 2 affordable housing units are certainly rented on a regular basis. And the other property is sort of an unknown. I'm not sure. It's probably a mix of long-term. So,
Wait, could you? It seems like one more unit then. So there's 4 units.
for structures.
4 structures.
That's what I was talking about. Those are the 4.
Okay, so five units and 4 structures. Okay. That's understood.
So again, in my opinion, as you think about, is the light pollution going to be greater from increased traffic on Gothic going to the Snodgrass Trailhead? Or is it going to be from activity on this particular lot system? Difficult to, in my mind, it's difficult to really get your arms around that. It certainly doesn't seem fair to attribute it all to this particular problem.
I agree with that. I wondered if we use a specific example, 750 Gothic, right? We're seeing that, I believe in those plans, that one of those units is going to be pushing up to that northern boundary line. How could we reasonably say that putting exterior lighting on a duplex isn't going to be more impactful than a single family home that would be 30 feet further away?
Well, look, I want to make sure we all understand a few things, right? First, duplex, there are 2 units over there on that boundary that we're talking about. The setbacks are in place for a reason. Right? Neither of these properties, neither of these structures violates the setback. So I want to be very, very clear. The town of Mount Crested View, you all, or the planning commission, I suppose, if you prefer some authority to them, you all have made that determination. 15-foot distance from the property line is an acceptable impact. That includes light coming from the home. Now, if there are, I don't know if you all have downlit, requirements for downlit lights, but in your architectural design review code, but I would imagine you do. Is that fair, Carlos?
Yeah.
Everybody's nodding their heads saying, yes, we do. So it's not as if we're talking about taking a couple of lights and just blasting them at the neighbor's houses and their spotlights. Right? These are downlit, they have to be downlit because we're dealing with night sky regulations.
Now it doesn't take into consideration certain elevations relative to the neighbors. Therein lies the problem with our current town code. That of course we can always go, well, talk to town. That's on you guys. Absolutely, we should be fixing that town code. It's not reasonable for the topography that we have.
No, I think that was gonna be my response as well. Right? We're not asking for any variance with respect to the heights. So like it or not, depending on the size, let's just say you have a single family residential home on this particular lot.
And assume 6,500 square feet. For the sake of, footprint.
You bet. Where are they gonna want to look? Probably straight up at the mountain. Probably gonna want to orient this if they can directly to the mountain. And so maybe the back of the structure is going to be facing the 750 Gothic property. I don't know. That's quite speculative. Right? Could be also that they're going to have windows and lights, interior lights from those windows, exterior lights. If there's a patio or anything else, which I believe is allowed in the setback. Again, I don't believe it is reasonable to think that the existence of 2 units that impact from a light perspective would be greater than one single family home with respect to one single neighbor to the north.
What, I think we're conflating two things. I was using that solely as an example of how that may impede on a single person, but the cumulative of that will certainly impact more than just 750. I believe you'll have impacts at the Pinnacles, up on Whetstone. And that's why I asked sort of where you're seeing the boundary of this neighborhood without the destructive character, because I believe one residence on Whetstone could make an argument that it's destructive to the character of their neighborhood. And I think a lot of them would assume that lot to be part of their neighborhood. Even when they go up, make first bend, and then they take the first bend north. I think there's still, people would have a connection and say, yeah, this is my neighborhood. So that's kind of why I'm asking where, even if your client see that neighborhood, because it could simply be very subjective here. And that's why it's not necessarily being dismissive, but you have a different boundary, which is why I think seeing dismissive. When it's not.
I think that's a fair point. So to bring your question to a firm and final answer, I want to go up to the zoning map here. The way I tend to look at this from a neighborhood perspective is which properties are accessed off of Traffic Road, as opposed to properties that are accessed off of Whetstone, right? The properties on Whetstone, frankly, across Whetstone, right? Some of them are right above the Nordic Inn property, right? Some of them are right above some, not the Timbers, I can't remember the two units that are right next to the Nordic towards the base area. But yeah, Whetstone and Evergreen. So, there may be some additional sensitivity when your property literally abuts, right, a different zoning district, right? And I understand that. I understand there might be some concern, but I don't think that you can fix every single one of them. So the way I perceive it in terms of the neighborhood, I think there's an argument. I think there's an argument that you look at Crested Butte, we're not talking about such a big place that you don't consider the whole thing the single neighborhood. Pitchfork stands out as its own individual neighborhood, right? Why? Because it's got one single entrance and one exit, and they're the same. So it's like self-contained. These properties, as you go up Gothic, they're not self-contained. It is from the time that you are headed up past the water treatment plant to the time that you get to Prospect. That is all Mount Crested Butte. But I do understand the notion of where does the neighborhood begin and end. And if it were me and I was defining it, I would say it's based on these properties that are accessed from Gothic Road are effectively the neighborhood that we're talking.
I just want to follow up on something that I thought I heard you say. So just to be clear, what's being proposed in principle is one structure being deed restricted, one structure being long-term rented, one structure the developer is going to partially live in and maybe short-term rent.
No, I don't think there's any intention to short-term rent that property on that particular structure.
Fourth one, contemplation for short-term rent.
Yeah, and you'll notice in the planning commission's conditions that this discussion about short-term rentals is one that the planning commission said, look, we're not gonna weigh in on that, we're gonna have that discussion.
And then one thing that stood out to me that I just appreciate a little follow-up on, one of the letters stated that the Giles's letter 2021 stated they'd be happy to do it just a single family residence if the plan is not approved. So is this idea that's before us kind of something they would like to do, but they're just fine doing a single family residence?
No, that's a mischaracterization of the letter.
Where would the mistake has been interpreted?
We asked the speaker on that.
I guess if it's not for you, then I'm now curious of what letter they're referring to.
It's in your packet.
The Giles's letter?
Yeah, there's a personal statement from the Giles dated October 5th, 2021 that I assume was reference. That's the only communication we've ever provided to the town. With the Giles.
We'll notice. Let me try and bring this to, I got the sense that she's characterizing. 36, this is a, I don't know what page of the packet is. It's the first page of the letter from Giles. It says verbatim here, we believe the most likely alternative, if our proposal is not approved, would be the construction of a new single-family residence, possibly with an ADU. That, I'd submit to you, is not, hey, we'd like to do this, but we have this other idea in mind. That's, hey, folks, if this isn't approved, right, what's likely to happen on the lot? It's a fact. It's not a characterization of a desire or some old preference for an alternative. That's what I was saying was in this characterization.
You guys have questions for the applicant? Any other questions for the applicant?
Then, chime in.
I'd like to,
Okay.
I just wanted to make you all aware, it's just kind of the first public hearing with comment with the new format. So after Q&A with the applicant, that will, once we finish that, then it will just be council deliberation.
And Mr. Mayor, I appreciate Stephanie making that point. I was going to make that point as well. I know that there has been a tradition in the past that the applicant, can take it or has taken advantage of, and it's been their right to do that. But when the questions for the applicant's attorney or the applicant are finished, then the public side of this is done, including the applicant and other members of the public. So now is the time, counsel, for any other questions you might have of the applicant. You have the right to ask questions of the staff or me after you've done that, but questions for the applicant, there's not, a third or fourth bite, and the applicant's not really going to be a part of your deliberations, which is the change that I appreciate your willingness to honor my request that you make. And that's why the script is set up the way it is.
Question for town staff. Carlos, just for the record, Pinnacle Homes, and then also 17 Whetstone, the original zonings for those haven't changed with what the structures are on the property.
Pinnacles, no, that's what I went to look through. Double check just to be sure.
Yeah.
At least as of 1986, that was low density multifamily. What was the other property you were asking about?
I was asking about Whetstone Chalet or 15.
That low density as well. That's Spellbound.
Yeah. And those are all originally zoned and built to the zone.
Yes, as low density.
Okay. So that's all I got.
So no other questions for the applicant? As Jerry mentioned, this is your last chance. And then I just have a final one, just so I'm clear, looking at our code. Huck, you're not proposing that there's a mistake in zoning.
the discussion about a mistake in zoning goes back to sort of something I don't know. Right? What I mean by that.
Well, that's my question though. You're not, I just want to, we've got a few things to consider and I've not heard anything about a mistake. And so I just want to make sure that we're not talking about that. You don't think there was a mistake in zoning
And my response to that
40
would
something
be,
years ago?
we should get to show you.
I'm asking if that's what, if that's part of their argument. I'm not asking for a legal opinion. Have you proposed that there's a mistake in zoning? I haven't heard one.
Right, I'm trying to answer your question as directly as I can. When you look at the red line here, I mentioned earlier that this original zoning, the red line separates the single family from the low density. So was it a mistake to zone that property when it has an A-frame on it as single family residential? Procedurally, probably not.
That's all I'm asking.
Yeah. procedurally, right.
Yeah. All right, any other questions for the applicant? Last chance? All right,
One item, if I may, Mr. Mayor, would it help for you all, do you all have any questions for Brandon Giles?
well, I mean, the questions for the applicant, I think are for both of you. So,
So it wouldn't be, if it's helpful for anybody to hear directly from him, we want to hear exactly what talking about.
Sure. I just have one question. What was your intended use of the property when you purchased it?
Yeah, when we looked at the property initially, it was yeah, so to the question, when we looked at the property originally, the graphic that was just up there as far as the zoning was something that we looked at, and it looked out of place. If, you know, there was the question on if that A-frame would not have been there, I think everyone practically would say, well, then you could have driven that line straight across. This would be zoned similar to the areas around this low density. And it's very consistent with what's there. So to your question on, you know, what we looked at, we did take an eye towards it on, this probably should be low density multifamily. And in addition to that, you know, the approach that we looked at is, okay, is there something that we can do that's additive to the community up here? Having one more house that's vacant for half of the year is not necessarily additive, but could we both have a place for our family, but yet offset some of the cost by doing the affordable housing for people that are being pushed out of the valley, right? You know, there's the comments about, you know, lifties and people bursting, like we come up here all the time, right? Half the days you can't even get restaurants, you can't get food in town because people are being pushed out. And so the idea was, can we add some of the affordable housing? And obviously that's gonna be a money loser, with no doubt it's gonna be a money loser. So you have to subsidize that with some of the rest of the property. And so we looked at it holistically. We want our place here, but we can actually balance these things and actually solve a big problem that exists within the community. And that's the eye that we took towards doing this. But directly to your question, did we look at the zoning map up front? Did we see the possibility? And did we want to look at pursuing it? The answer is yes.
all right. So I'm gonna close the public comment. So closing public comment at 7:54 PM. And so next is town council deliberation. So this is where we talk amongst ourselves and make a decision on this. So if anybody wanna start? Michael?
So, a couple things. One, a year ago, we were talking about the master plan. And it was absolutely an instance that any type of love zone is just DOA. And we have to keep that in consideration. Number of people that came and spoke against any type of love zone, we have to remember that. Yes, kind of leads to my second question. First time they came to the concept. The concept thing, we did point out that, yeah, it kind of looks funny at 740 sitting there, but then I pose a question that, you know, Puck is a great order, he is, and if Doug at 750 all of a sudden decides to put 4 buildings on, Puck could probably make a pretty convincing argument that 750 needs to be low density multifamily as well. And then
And the boundary will change.
the boundary will change again. So, reading the planning commission's notes, they were very wary of setting precedent. And, you know, a lot of their, I mentioned there were frequently setting, about setting precedent here and kind of going against what we saw last year, during last month's will of many of the residents here, so.
Thanks, Michael. Anybody else want to jump in?
We could just go around. You want to go ahead?
You know, my thinking on, you know, and how I've grounded myself on this topic is, you know, I embrace the idea that, you know, or the question, has the character of the neighborhood changed? Not as the character of the community changed, but as the character of the neighborhood changed. And from my perspective, no, it has not. And so there's no compelling reason to change that neighborhood. And once again, maybe it's a little more nuanced than I should be, but it's neighborhood versus community. What they are trying to accomplish with the affordable housing component is addressing the community, not the neighborhood. So I'm not too enthusiastic about upzoning, you know, especially in light of the whole process we went through with the master plan and the feedback we got from that. So in a nutshell, that's, you know, my way of saying I don't support it.
I'll be simple and sweet here. You can take Michael's comments and go get a.
Okay. Mark. I wasn't expecting you to do so fast. That was Janet's idea to go in order, but I have a question for you, Neil. Is this a rezoning, a PUD, or both? Well, if this goes, you know, advances. It's a rezoning. Okay. Can you shed some light on the difference between the decision-making process of how we handle a PUD versus a rezoning? You know, somebody buys a chunk of property that they want to do something big with, and they massage various aspects of our zoning.
Well, a PUD is a rezoning, but what comes along with that rezoning? Well, there's a whole map for the drive. So it doesn't have to be a larger. Aspects of. This is a pretty much a low density development. That's why the staff looked at this was before. So we have to come back with the zoning ordinance. So.
And not to put you on the spot, or sorry to do so, but it was referenced in one or some of the letters regarding similar requests being denied. Do you have any examples of an upzoning being denied or approved, and why?
In the town of Mount Crested Butte. Or
yeah.
In 2 months of experience.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any upzonings from single family.
To your first question, and you put on the spot there. Yeah, 2 months. A little too much. He didn't. No, that's the way it should have been done. I appreciate that. But I can, you know, given he doesn't have the same historical background, that I can add to that. No plan, this is from the code. Plan unit development or PUD is established as the zoning district to provide a greater flexibility in land development and use by allowing such development to be based upon a comprehensive, integrated, detailed, and site-specific development plan, rather than upon specific constraints as applicable to uniform lot by lot development. So in short, what that says is a PUD is if you can't, it allows it's a much more robust process, as you guys know, you've been through multiple ones of those, than a standard rezoning. It is a rezoning, application, but it's one that allows for that greater flexibility that maybe you want. And it's usually multiple properties that are involved with it as well, not always. Where the straight rezoning is, and so in a PUD, you set the zoning through the process. That's why the process is more straightforward. In this type of rezoning application, you are plugging the property into another district that already has the zoning requirements defined. So hopefully that answers the first part of your question. They're both rezoning. PUD is much more robust of a rezoning application because of all that flexibility that is going to be built into it. To your second question, in my time, 18 years or so, there have been 2 rezoning applications. One which was lots 38 and 42 CBA3, which is on Hunter Hill Road. It's 5 single-family lots to be upzoned to high-density multifamily. That was denied. I'd have to go back through the minutes to see what the findings were. And then more recently, in the last, let's say 8 years, at the end of Cinnamon Mountain Road, the property was downzoned from high-density multifamily to low-density multifamily. That was approved. And that was the Bridges from Columbine Hill. So in my time, those are the 2 straight rezoning, not PUD applications that I recall. Thanks.
And Bridges, if I
Sure.
may, Bridges also have one of the site-specific development plans for certain parameters built into that zone.
So as far as shifting comments, I think a compelling argument was the access and trying to define a neighborhood that way. Savvy, without making an assumption on intention or coming to the table with a far more robust housing component. I think it should be a model moving forward. I appreciate that angle. My initial ponderance with reading through this is Michael's comment. We just went through all of this. Why is this different than what we went through before with the master plan? And why is this that much more special that we should consider this when the community is pretty firm? Or didn't.
You remember during the master plan kind of discussions and comment on that. Some we, council staff, were just kind of sneaking that in there, right? And they're suspicious of that. Saying, hey, this is kind of the secret master plan of the master plan. And for us to hear them and then talk about it again, but then turn around several months later. So we kind of confirm some of those fears or suspicions. So
I like this plan because it checks so many boxes that we had in our climate action plan. Short of the upzoning, it meets a lot of the needs and our goals of the master plan, traffic lines, accessibility, basically, etc. So this was kind of a tough one, but at the end of the day, it just comes back to me of this, and where I think we differ is I see zoning as a promise. Now, it can be a promissory plan, however you want to phrase it, but at the end of the day, this came up during our master plan sessions, and other councils have espoused a similar sentiment, but it's a promise that we make to people who live in our community. If people plan their lives and make major life decisions based on those promises that have been given, and then those are changed really dramatically in a way, that erodes the faith in the community, it erodes the relationships in the community. And just as the Gauss family purchased that lot with an understanding of its actual zoning and what was capable of it, they may have gotten other input and said, hey, maybe it's worth pursuing this other action, but the current owner purchased that knowing it was single family. And to me, I just feel like it would be a disservice to the residents in the community and those that live further uphill that have a cynical approach as I have always had, that was just a matter of time. When are they gonna break the promise? When are we going to be overtaxed? When are we gonna, et cetera, insert issue here, right? So for me, I can't get behind this solely because I believe we are breaking promise that we've made to property.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you were to do so, it would be like a massive show, kind of like an overall plan, but I'm a little uncomfortable kind of ad hoc, all the one once considering upzoning. Like, where do you draw the line at that point, or is it considered all at once? You consider the line as a whole, or circle, or whatever. But I also agree that it is a good project in general, but yeah, no, I don't. I do think also, I think it's probably quite clear, not only also with the massive plan that we have.
Okay, well, I agree with what everyone has said. I think one of the things I've been focused on is maybe a little more simple though, and that's our code. And so it's the reason I asked the question about a mistake, because I was just trying to lop off half of the thing that we're supposed to think about, and I just don't see the significant change in the area's character, or at least I don't see a change that isn't applicable to the entire town. I realize STRs have changed lots of things in lots of places, but that's a change that applies to the whole town. And I also realize it's right on the boundary, but boundaries are boundary. I think a pinky toe would look really strange if it wasn't attached to a foot. And it seems like that's what we have here. You have the whole foot of the single family, and that lot is the pinky toe, but it's still part of the foot. I do appreciate the housing aspect of it, and trying to be additive and trying to be creative in what you brought to us. But I also have precedent concerns in that way. It seems like if we were to approve this, then we would be following the code unless you brought us a big chunk of housing that we'd be really interested in. I just don't see that as a good precedent to set. I also don't see it in our code. I don't see anywhere in our code where it says that we can approve a zoning change if it comes with affordable housing. And so I'm also not for change. Of course.
And your options for council, and item C was motion to deny the development plan and further to direct the staff to prepare written findings for the council's action at the next available meeting. Can you explain what the second part of that means?
Yes, so in your packet, in the word criteria and findings that town council has to make in order to support their motion. So staff would just like direction from you all, which option they align with, to craft those findings.
And if I can add to what Leah has said, and I'm sorry for misidentifying her earlier. I don't know how that happened. Sorry, Leah. It's especially, honestly, especially in a land use application that is contested. I like to be able to have a written record that's defensible. I don't know if there's going to be a challenge to your action here, and Mr. Hucksep's not on the spot and doesn't need to be telling us that. But I would like to be able to summarize what the evidence and the council's conclusions based on that evidence. It won't take much effort, but to have a good set of written findings that relates to the standards that are in the code, as the mayor mentioned, is just a good practice to have in what I'll call anything other than a non-contested, land use action. It's a good practice either direction. As you'll notice, the recommended motions had it either way. Even if you'd approved it, I would want to have done that and done a good job of summarizing what your conclusions were so that you could have a written record of your decision. That's why the motion is written the way it is. I mean, you could just go with straight motion to deny, and that's fine. You often do, but especially where it may well be contested, I'd like to have some short written findings.
In that case, I will move to deny the development plan and further to direct the staff to prepare written findings for council's action at the next available meeting. So,
There's a motion from Janet and a second from Dwayne to deny the rezoning application and to provide findings of fact and support thereof. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Tiffany.
Ellen,
Yes.
Steve.
Yep.
Roman,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Dwayne.
Yep.
Michael.
Yep.
Mayor Kimpton.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Secret of that.
Looks like we're taking a 5-minute break.
That's
all right. It's not all right. All right, we're back from our break. Next item is continued charter amendment discussion. Ballot question language. Jerry.
Thank you. I asked that y'all can hear me okay? Am I coming through all right?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I asked Nick to join me because he's worked with me on this as well, but council's familiar with this issue. You had a good discussion previously, in fact, I think 2 discussions previously. And the August deadline is beginning to get a little closer now for actual ballot language to the county clerk and recorder. And if you're going to go there, it's a 2-reading ordinance. So just bear that in mind. You still have plenty of time. So it's not necessarily that you take an action tonight, but I wanted to refresh your recollection. There are effectively 5 different ways or 5 options, 4 of which try to address the issue that you have, which is filling vacancies and getting people to run and the difficulty of that. And so we tried to refresh your recollection by kind of listing what those were. Keep the present 2-term limitation, but allow somebody to run for office after being out of office for 4 years. Okay, door number 2, same thing, you only have to be out of office for 2 years, and you can run again. Door number 3, take it out to 3-term limit instead of a 2-term limit. So you get the fun of serving 12 years in a row if you want. Ask the voters to eliminate the restriction entirely. I understand that was asked and answered not long ago. And then, of course, no change. The sense we got, and I don't want to get too far out ahead of what council wanted, but in kind of reading the tea leaves and the discussion, the sense we got was that bring back something that's a little more concrete that combines the doors numbers 2 and 3. So the out of office for 2 years and 3 consecutive terms. And so that's the language of the draft ordinance that you see that has been attached. And we can certainly talk about any of the options. You can give us guidance. If we're really close tonight, we could conceivably do first reading, but I would rather get your direction and we can finalize the ordinance and then bring it back to you for first reading next meeting, second reading the meeting after that. And I think unless Tiffany feels differently, that would still give us plenty of time to get our ballot language to the county clerk and recorder. Of course, if you choose not to take the last door, then we're kind of done. So with that introduction, I'd encourage and would embrace a council discussion. I know it's more for your discussion amongst yourselves, but I wanted to set the table for you.
I have a question for you. Can you please explain the last two sentences of the proposed ballot with the dates of in 86 and 88?
Yes.
And one
Yeah.
being and ending in April, and why they're not, because we've gone to all November.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for asking that. I really appreciate it. You know, charters are like constitutions. They have this stuff in them that was pertinent at the time they were adopted. And this is the classic, what's the right way of saying it? Intro language, or language that was put as a transition to the staggered term system you have at the time. It's irrelevant now. And what if, very honestly, that and two other things I'd love to fix while we're at it. And I'd like to get your thoughts about that. But if you do a ballot question, then number one, we would delete that whole sentence, the for council. That way we get rid of the word councilmanic, which, believe it or not, is a word. But I'd like to, if the sentence was good, was useful, or in fact, it was required at transition. But you know, it's no longer the 80s. You don't need that anymore. That can just go away. And while you're at it, instead of, I think there's a couple of references to councilmen, which can get changed to councilperson. When we look through the rest of the charter, I think this is the only place that's not gender neutral. So it's kind of handy. And what we would do in the ballot question would be, or in the ordinance would be to adjust council member term limitations and make conforming and gender neutral changes in connection therewith. And that is a way that you can clean this up while you're doing the main job. And I don't think it would confuse the voters much at all to see that language deleted. Probably it'd confuse them more to see the language. Yeah. So it's,
I don't understand.
Exactly. It's not the reason you do the ballot question, but if you choose to do the ballot question, I was ready to say to you, well, now that you've said that, can we do this cleanup? So you've anticipated a question I was going to have for you anyhow.
And so Jerry, that's language that isn't shown in your proposed language, but that we would add to it.
Yes, that's right. I mean, I believe you have in the packet the proposed form of ordinance, correct? And if you go to the second page of that ordinance, that quotes the present charter in that particular, that quotes the present charter. The language that's in all caps would be new, and that's what combines doors numbers 2 and 3 at the moment. And so we would just take the opportunity to turn councilman in the first line to council member. And we would delete the last sentence with the 1980 councilmaniac stuff, councilmanic stuff. Yeah. So, but fundamentally, obviously, you need to decide if you want to be able to add another consecutive term, if you want to shorten the time period between, or establish and shorten or shorten the time period between terms to make them non-consecutive and to make you eligible again to run after you've been out of office for a certain amount of time.
Actually agree on that 2 years in between, or did we, or 4 years?
That's what we're talking about.
I really agree on it.
Yeah, just
Okay.
I think Jerry was just trying to condense the things he thought we had the most consensus on. So
We did spend time on 4 and 2, but not much, and 2 seemed to be a lean, but I would also point out that, like,
it seems like we've got something, the one thing that still weighs on my mind is sort of optics, right? We need this, we need whatever we put forth to pass. And so we might consider 4 off just because we're asking for an extension to 3 terms. It's a thought. But I also just, in reading it, I'm pretty happy with that as well. But I figured I'd bring it up that we may have, me up to 4 years off just to reach, but maybe it doesn't, maybe no one even notice or appreciate that, I don't know.
So Jerry, with the proposed ballot language you have, the 3 consecutive council terms, so someone, I'm gonna pick on Michael, Michael could serve 12 years, take 2 years off, and then serve another 12 years, is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
And then take
You up for that, Michael?
Yeah. Or, he could serve, I mean, you can mix and match it a lot of ways. He could serve 12 years, take, in this case, 4 years off and serve another 4 years and say, I'm done. I mean, you obviously you don't have to, when you come back, you don't have to serve as the whole shot, but you could. And then you take 4 years off and come back yet again, I guess. But at some point, you're not going to come back.
There's enough money in the world for you to do that.
Oh, sorry, I also have something that.
I'm just, I'm in the bullet point number 2. Just keep the 2, drop an election cycle out and be eligible to run again. Not complicating the situation much, right?
Say that again,
I like bullet point number 2. I think there's an ease to it.
so staying
We stay in
2-year
2,
terms.
but you're just eligible after you step out for an election cycle. I think getting into trying to push it to 3 more consecutive terms and then adding another layer with taking 1 cycle off or 2 or 4 years off. To me, I think there is sort of a messaging thing to this in terms of just reading it and understanding it, I think. So for me, there's not a lot of disruption other than simply somebody can run again in the future. Right. So to me, there's a real compromise.
Roman, then Michael.
Jerry, if somebody goes 1 term, takes 2 years off, and then does that mean they can run for 3 consecutive terms after that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I would like to merge the second and third option, extending to 3 cycles and then taking 2 years off. Until we have a contested election.
That's what this is, by the way.
Proposed ballot language.
Yeah. That's the draft. And I will say, I didn't mean to, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Roman. I didn't mean to imply that was anything other than, I wanted you to at least see the charter language in front of you so you could mess with it. Forgive me, Roman, please go right ahead.
Until we have a contested election, I think we be fairly aggressive. With the remote voting vote that went down the way it did, slightly shrunk the size of the pool of people that may want to run. I know we're trying to be creative with how to attract people to want to do this. And those are, I think, good ideas that were already thrown out there in our last discussion. But until we actually have an election that's contested, I think we need to be aggressive with this. And I'd be in favor of the 3 terms for 2 years off to run again.
I'm with Steve on the second bullet. But it has a better chance of passing because as a voter, when you see retain the president second 2-term rotation, that might be able to agree. Okay, do that versus 3 years sit out. complicated, so I think just from a messaging point of view and use for just consumption of the voter, and that second one is more what I'm thinking of, and I think we get that message out a little bit easier than trying to explain that the executive thing now. I totally understand where it comes from, Roland. Yeah, and you know, I'd like to say that I think there's a contested election coming up, because you know, I talk to people, and but you know, people change their mind all the time. I tell you what you want to hear, right? But from a from this point of view, I like the second one just because of the wording on it and just the ease of understanding.
I do agree with Roland. I'm in that camp. I would prefer, I mean, I want to start period. But I'm trying to come to the middle ground in my head where how does something get passed versus something.
My motion at the previous meeting was for 4.2, and I haven't changed my mind.
And that failed.
And it failed, but
It sounds
I
like
voted for it.
But it sounds like it's coming back around.
No, I was the only yes. Oh, did you? Okay.
I hear what your concerns are, Michael. I think messaging is a big part of this. It was poorly done the last time around, but what if, you know, I'm just kind of wrapping it up here, but if there's an opportunity down the road for a Q&A with Carlos, with the paper, and one of the things he mentions is we haven't had an election since 2008. No one wants to do this. So we're trying to be more creative and trying to get people in the seats. I think that would go a long way in trying to use that kind of messaging for people. And then as far as a contested election, remember the sea of people in the audience after the STR stuff, they're like, we're coming for you. And you know, Steve walked in at 11:59 and you know, there he is again, you know? So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hot air out there.
Yeah, I totally get it. I totally get it. Yeah, it's all about the messaging. Yeah.
But my position stands.
I don't disagree with anything you said. It's just as some voters don't do as much research and don't listen to many interviews, don't read the books and all that kind of stuff. They're going to put their ballot and say retain the present executive two-term limitation. Fortunately, that's the case. Messaging is probably in my opinion.
Looks like we're all pretty close, now it's just determining the number of percents. I'm going with ways, I'm with us.
There is the fire protection district model, how to get something passed.
Okay, I like where your head's at.
That doesn't go in the paper. You can quote and that model is, you know, make it seem like nothing's changing, even though things are changing. You know, and so I kind of look at bullet point number 2 as, you know, heinous as what fire protection district did. You know, I understand exactly why they did it. And that's to trick people into thinking that, you know, nothing to see here, you know, vote yes. And, you know, so I'm not advocating that we use their model, but just be aware that their model works.
I put on the, it is very common practice, right, to make sure you spend a lot of time on the ballot language so that you effectively communicate what you want to communicate to the people voting on that ballot. That does not make it nefarious by design.
But when you, that's a over a beer conversation.
I move to propose a ballot language that extends our terms to 3 years with the requirement of having to take 2 years off in order to run again.
3 terms, not 3 years.
I move to propose ballot language that extends our terms to 3 with the requirement that 2 years be taken off before being able to. Run again. Thank you.
Second.
So we have a motion from Roman and a second from Dwayne. Hold on, we're not in discussion yet. So we have a motion from Roman and a second from Dwayne to extend council terms to 3 years with 2 years off before you can run again, which is essentially what Jerry has put in the packet as proposed language. I'm looking at you, Jerry, just to confirm what I've said is correct.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, so just to help everyone, that's the bit that's in your packet. Any further discussion?
What did we determine for those last 2 sentences? That's going to be clarified.
Yeah, when my idea is this, when a motion passes, whichever one it is, then I'm going to ask you to direct that we make these conforming changes and build them into an ordinance that we'll bring back in a nice clean form. I was making some notes for that, and it'll be something like, and in connection therewith, to declare or to delete unnecessary language and provide for gender neutral terminology. But whatever motion passes, I'll ask you to add that to it. But I think you should work on the policy question first, and we'll hitch this other thing onto it once you approve that.
Just wonder that lower part's a really big piece for me, because we are asking for quite a bit more, pushing it to the 3 term, in my opinion. So pushing it 3 consecutive. Any other information in there that's going to be there is going to confuse and turn into personal opinion. So, yeah. So I guess I'm kind of, that's where my struggle and hang up lies with this. I don't realistically, my gut says that 3 consecutive terms, asking that we would change it. Well, I don't believe it will happen. Because 70% against, yes, poor messaging, yes, all those other factors, but I don't want to put any of my chips on future messaging to impact the outcome. I just want what is the context included.
I know I seconded for 3 years. But I could certainly vote for 2 with 2 years off. I'm just putting it out that when it comes time to vote. Yeah.
Just because you.
Yeah, no, it's a second side vote.
Yeah. It's not a vote. Second, you're just seconding the motion. It does not mean you
Exactly.
support it or not.
Ready to vote?
Any other? I hear your point, Steve. Any other discussion?
I'm not totally see this confusion. I like just the messaging of.
I even foresee a Mount Crested Butte briefs about how there hasn't been an election since 2008. Start the message.
It could be quite creative. People, honestly, yes, whereas.
Yeah, what about that, Jerry? Is there any options for additional explanatory language or anything like that, like the reason we're doing this?
Yeah, you've got a couple of ways to do it. You can certainly build some of that explanatory language into the ordinance. And you'll notice there are some whereas clauses in the ordinance that are pretty short right now and kind of just the facts, ma'am, but you can build into that the discussion about the difficulty of filling seats and the fact there's not been an election since whenever it was, 2008. In addition to that, you're allowed to adopt a resolution supporting or opposing a ballot measure. And that's fair under the law, but you can only distribute that resolution the same way you distribute other resolutions. City of North Glen adopted a resolution, I think, pushing a tax measure a long time ago and mailed a copy to every resident. And the court said, you know, unless you're mailing a copy of your resolution to every resident all the time, you can't do that. That's a violation of the Fair Campaign Practices Act. So in answer to your question, you can do three things. You can add some whereas clauses in the ordinance. You can pass a resolution that actually urges voters to vote for it, as long as you just publish that resolution in the normal course. And you can take individual actions as members of the community anytime you like and spend individual personal money to urge voters to vote for or against. So those are your avenues.
Well, didn't we do that for the last ballot initiative?
No. It's as dry as we could get.
So Jerry, am I correct in that it could say something like, whereas there has not been an election in Mount Crested Butte since 2008, and whereas the town of Mount Crested Butte desires to attract more people to the process, that kind of thing?
Yep, that's all fair game. We put it in the resolution, put it in the ordinance, you bet.
I'm chuckling because I'm picturing, whereas we have to beg people to submit a letter of interest to the position.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, and I would absolutely say, and you know, there have all the whereas that were just mentioned, and whereas, you know, this state of affairs does not serve the community well and results in you know, an impact on the ability for the community fully represented. You know, you can actually wax pretty eloquent and tell that full story. Nothing wrong with that.
and lastly, I will point out, as we move forward, we are saying long-term residents. Per Tiffany's report, is it this year, when you say as of 6/15/23 with the SDR data? Is
Yeah.
that- So 17 new licenses this year.
We don't know if there's gonna be-
Sure, yeah, but you know, those are out of the long term. So, just another factor. You don't follow that one?
No, I don't at all.
It could be a sale from.
Well, that would be a transfer of ownership, which is 12 this year.
Could be
But
a long-term
17 new
owner,
licenses.
pets, and they couldn't find somebody to rent it out, that's what it's like, short term.
You're not talking.
A lot happens if you're
Turbulence,
jumping.
not
Yeah,
short-term
yeah.
rentals.
No, I'm using this
I
piece
know
of
what
data
you're
as
saying, but,
the pool is getting smaller of potential candidates.
Well, I just, so, you know, we're a little bit late in the game with a motion on the table and we're in the discussion part, but the bit from Jerry, I don't think we've discussed much before the language. And so that is interesting to me. It's maybe a way to help get the goal, help achieve the goal we're trying to get, which is more people to run for council. So I hope that changes anybody's.
And it grants us more time to affect that, right?
That is also true. Yep. That is also true.
Does not change my support for option 2.
All right, well, does anybody else have? All right, Tiffany.
I have a question for Jerry off the record, please. Okay, Michael.
No.
Dwayne,
No.
Janet,
No.
Roman,
Yes?
Steve,
No.
Alec,
Yes.
Mayor Kimpton.
Yes.
The motion failed.
Just gonna say, relative to next step,
I can totally be behind the 3 thing, but I just want to see the language that would accompany that more specifically. So I am open to that, but as it stands right now, that I have to read that and be convinced from the whereas part. Otherwise, I just, if it doesn't blow my mind or suck me in right away, then so I'm open to that 3.
Well, as Jerry mentioned, we've got a little time. We can take another crack at this. So Jerry, I think, Jerry and Nick, it seems like we tasked you with another crack at this. Maybe, so what I'm hearing is 2 things. Perhaps a crack at the explanatory language.
Sure.
And then also Steve's point of what it looks like when we include the gender neutral and all that stuff that we want to include. Just how does that look to a voter when they get to that section of their ballot?
Sure, that's easy. And then the base change though would be what?
Well, I think it sounds like the middle part is still in flux. And so I think we're talking about
Okay.
explanatory language, and then the language, the housekeeping that comes at the bottom, and then depending on how that looks might influence what happens in the middle.
Okay, all right. In terms of the draft, shall I, yeah, I don't know what the interference is. Every now and again, there's just all this static. In terms of the draft, for the base change, what I'm calling the base change, the stuff in all caps that's, that made a choice that we just kind of stabbed at. Shall I leave that the same?
I
Because
think just same with understanding that specifically failed tonight, but again, hearing from Steve, it may not, it may be reconsidered. If we could get a look at in the top and the bottom language might influence what we decide on the middle.
okay, I think what we might do is put in alternative, actually the alternative language. I think there's a way for us to format it so that you can see all of the ways it would be articulated within this language, this paragraph itself. It's just a matter of formatting so that you can basically eliminate the stuff you don't want, but we'll work on that. I think I know what we need to do.
So Jerry, does that mean like a clean version, if you will, with no strike throughs or anything like that?
Yeah, it'll be a clean version in the sense that I will be striking through the last sentence, the business about the 1986 and Council Manick. I'll show that as struck. I'll show councilman at the top of that paragraph as council person. So councilman will be struck and council person will be on all caps. And then I think what we'll do is we'll say if he, she will have been previously elected to serve as council member for : and then I think we'll do some bullets, some indented bullets. And then we can have each of the options in all caps, just so that you can actually see how they will read. And then we'll show the last sentence as struck through. And then we'll add more whereases to the ordinance that tell the story. We can also use that ordinance language to create the resolution that you're allowed to pass under the Fair Campaign Practices Act. But we'll, for now, use the whereas clauses in the ordinance to more fully tell the story of there haven't been elections since this time. It's been very difficult. The challenges, are posed by the present charter, really limit the ability of people to serve. The public isn't well served by that, etc. So we can put all that into a new draft, and it should position you, I think, to choose pretty easily.
And when I say clean version, I mean a non-struck through version, because when I read in there, your eye jumps around, it doesn't flow, just like another version of it, one struck through and one clean.
Oh, okay, sure, we do that too. Yeah, you bet. By the strike through show I believe what you'd want to delete, but what we can do is show you the present charter in clean in an ordinance, and then the various changes formatted with strike through in all caps to show what's coming out of the charter and what's going in.
Great, and then maybe a suggestion of adding a they after he, she.
Yeah, sure. It's time to do that.
I can travel back and
No,
use your
I'm
language.
I'm
Wayne.
sorry, something totally. I was gonna, oh, yeah, I was gonna ask, you said council person where there's 2 times that it says council member. Which, would you change all of those to council person?
No, I think where it says council member, I think you just leave it at council member. In the rest of the charter, it uses both terms, council member or council person.
I think they
And
are.
so that's gender neutral. I would be inclined to just change councilman to council member. Because again, if I'm a voter, I go, oh, I get it. The second line has council member, they're just correcting that. I think that would achieves the goal. And the fact that you have some random council persons elsewhere in the charter, it's still gender neutral, and I think you get there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, based upon the discussion we had prior to the vote, why aren't we considering, or can we still bring up a motion for that second bullet? Yeah, make a motion.
Well, we sure can, and I think what Jerry's gonna do is when he does the preamble and the housekeeping in the middle of that, he's gonna put all the options together for when we discuss it next time. But you can do whatever you want. That is also true.
Now, if a motion passes, I'll do that.
Right, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, I mean, because right now, I'll move to the second bullet, retain present consecutive 2-term limitation and then charges. Expressly permit a candidate for office to be held in election again after being out of office for 1 full election cycle, that being 2 years.
Okay, we have a motion from Michael and a second from Janet to do option number 2, which is keeping the term limit at 2 consecutive terms, but allowing a person who's done 2 consecutive terms to return to council after a 2-year or 4-year, 2-year. So a 2-year election cycle. So again, to make it, if you're looking at your packet, it's the same as what Jerry has in the packet, except it's 2 4-year terms instead of 3 4-year terms. So does everybody understand the motion? All right, any further discussion? Tiffany?
Alex,
No.
Roman,
No?
Steve,
No.
Michael.
Yep.
Janet,
Yes.
Dwayne,
Yes.
Nicholas,
No.
motion fails.
For me, it is the wording, guys, sorry.
No.
You know, I
No, that's
prefer the
fine.
3. I
That's
prefer
fine.
the 3. I think there's a nuance here that I need to get over. So, sorry.
So no, all good. It's good that we did that. But kind of back to your question, I think what we're gonna get next is again, the preamble, like why we're doing it. And then Jerry has things that I think we all agree need to be cleaned up. And so I'll call that the housekeeping. So he's gonna give us the preamble and the housekeeping, and then in between, the policy questions that just got voted down twice. We're gonna take another crack at those when we consider the language in total. Unless somebody has a motion for another.
Everybody in town has to serve 1 day.
Okay,
If there's, thank you, Jerry and Nick.
yep, we know what to do.
Nick, did your dog help out with this?
No, but I actually had an idea. as I was listening to you guys talk, one option that we haven't presented that I guess we could have is the scheme that we presented tonight, but instead of a 2-year break, a 4-year break. So 3 terms in 4 years. We haven't presented that option, but if you wanted to see what that looks like, we could come back with that as well.
Thanks, Nick. And Alec, Councilmember Lindeman did bring that up. So we'll ponder that. We're apparently not done with this. So
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
sounds good.
All right, so moving on then, town manager's report and discussion items. Carlos.
Nothing to add to the report, but of course, answer any questions.
Questions for Carlos? Anything you want to add?
I think I covered everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We were closed yesterday. I can't really find it too much or not.
Yeah.
For the holiday.
We're still working though.
That is for like, I came in just long enough to realize my email wasn't working.
Is it part of this authenticator thing? The authenticator issue?
It's,
I'm having some bunch of issues and I haven't called IT, I just use my phone now because it won't work on this stuff.
it's
If you come in and see
Beyond
me,
that.
we can work on it together.
Okay.
Carlos is beyond. the authenticator, But I was just forced to do it today,
Yeah,
and I threw my hands up in the air a few times.
yeah, that's what I did, that's why I said. Desktop's overrated.
All right, clerk's report and discussion items. Tiffany?
You saw my clerk's report in the packet. Something to note, like I said, 6 e-bike checks have been issued. They were all bikes purchased online. I've got a handful more in my inbox that I need to process. One thing I am struggling with, that you guys asked me to look into, is the Underwriters Laboratory. I can't figure that out at all.
I think basically if it's sourced in the United States,
They're buying the bikes online.
well, right, but from a online company doing business in the United States, right?
I think so. I haven't like gone.
there's a
and pulled up
specific
individual-
test for e-bikes. It's UL
Yep.
number. It exists. I looked it up when we were here last. I don't know how many my bike is UL listed. I don't know how many actually are.
It's not on the receipt. I tried to pull it up and I don't necessarily see it on the website. So I've been digging and I just haven't been able to find that.
I mean, I think anyone who sells them in the United States is gonna have to meet that standard. And so that should be the vast majority of things, but there are avenues for getting goods now sort of outside the regular channels. And so I think
Okay,
that was kind of the concern. Like
okay,
you can buy things directly from China now, and it's sort of outside the normal channels of commerce. And so
Okay.
I think that was the concern.
I'll look into that more. And then I also had someone submit, so Jerry, this is a bit of a thing for you to listen up on. So our resolution does not state that the e-bike has to be new. I know that was in the discussion, but it did not make it into the resolution. I have someone that purchased it online. It's recycled e-bike from an online retailer. So somehow the online retailer, someone sold them the bike, then they went through it. I pulled it up and read a little bit about it. They go through it, they certify it, and then they resell it. Does that qualify?
We specifically said it, didn't it? We might not have made it into the resolution, but we had. a
Definitely said it
conversation
had to be said.
Specifically said.
Jerry? If the resolution doesn't say it, but it was in the discussion.
You know, what the staff has to go with is the, the resolution and the, what's written down. Now, I get it that where there's real, you can fill in the gaps with the discussion, or it says buy an e-bike. I don't think it has made a real distinction between new and used. It's an e-bike, and if the public policy is to get e-bikes out out in town, then that serves that policy by having one that's used. Having said that, if you've got the ability adjust that policy and add to it anytime you like. So if you want to direct that to the staff that it's new bikes only, then you can do that. But, you know, the same thing with the residency. The standards are what they are, and we're getting a lot of questions around that, and I've fielded them with Tiffany, and I think we've answered them in the right way. But there's always unintended consequences or subtleties on a policy like this. So I'd want to hear, I think we need to hear from the council that it's just new bikes only, and that's fine if that's the policy you want to adopt.
Because this wasn't on the agenda, we can't do a motion tonight on it.
You can always add to your agenda, especially for something that isn't a quasi judicial matter. It's, giving direction to staff. So you can always, it's a little clunky, but we could add a motion to direct that a resolution be prepared, because we adopted that by resolution, didn't we? Yeah.
Yes.
So you should amend by resolution. So you got two choices. You could take a motion to direct that a resolution be prepared and signed by the mayor, confirming that the e-bike policy only applies to the purchase of new e-bikes. That motion would be good enough, and we can create a resolution that's really quite short that amends the prior resolution and does that. And you can do that all in a that's not a great Band-Aid, but what I'm trying to do is address the problem, which is timing, right?
Jared, do we amend the agenda to include that? Or can Janet just make the motion you just said?
Yeah, it happens frequently that councils, halfway through an agenda go, I'd like to do this thing that's related, but came up in council member comments. It's not the best way to do it. I recognize that. And it's not something you're going to do all the time. But because it's not a rezoning or some quasi judicial matter where you had to have given notice ahead of time, and the public there's due process rights of the public, we don't have any of those concerns here. Because you did it by resolution, you're sort of stuck with that. But what I'm trying to do is solve the timing problem. And the best I can do is to say, a proper motion would be to move to approve a resolution to amend the previous resolution number, whatever, to confirm that the e-bike policy applies only to new e-bikes, and further direct that the town attorney and town clerk prepare that resolution for signature by the mayor. That gets you to resolution land, as fast as you can, and gets it to you tonight.
Still moving.
Janet still moved in that second.
Okay.
No, that was exactly what he said. Okay, yeah, he just rescheduled.
All right, we have a motion from Janet and a second from Alec. Motions to
Make it new bikes only. And what's the logic for requiring?
Don't know, but we definitely decided that was the case. at a previous
Well, I know that
discussion.
we talked about that, but we never talked about why it had to be on there.
We did that, we just aren't writing that.
We didn't want people doing used bikes. Buying a bike that's $505 and the rebate was $500.
The UL.
Yeah, I understand that, but if it's through a retailer doing as a business to use the issue, then it's.
Motion.
Well, so I guess we're in the further discussion part. So motion and second, further discussion, Roman.
Well, Dwayne brought it up, but my underlying intention was, to prevent gaming the system, but also to stimulate the economy. We glossed over the part of requiring people to buy it in Valley. So it might be somewhat moot, but I still like the idea of a new bike. Safety's a part of it, and There's a certain accountability of having a new bike from the company directly. So, yeah, but as far as amending the agenda and whatnot, I'd like to reserve that for something a little bit more pressing or important. We're talking about a couple weeks of taking this down the line, and I don't know how pressing it is for us to do a clunky, atypical thing. Personally, like to reserve that for. It would
so-
be 3 weeks. just so you know.
And so if that were the case, then we have this one pending, and so do we pay out on that one now?
We got much on the floor, so.
No, I know, but I'm just discussion. I'll make sure we vote on the motion, but I'm just trying to think of how this works.
Yeah.
And I have my pending e-bike, and I have to admit, I'm getting them out pretty quick. I'm not holding on to these for more than a few days.
Yeah. Well, what you could do, I suppose, is to hang on to this particular one to say, communicate back to the applicant. I'm getting, I need to get guidance from the council on whether this was to extend to new bikes only or used bikes. And there was discussion to council. I need to get guidance. And in fact, they've given me guidance. They're going to make a decision about that at their next meeting on such and such a date. And after that date, I'll be able to either approve or not your request. I think that if you want to wait, and I absolutely understand the reason to not take dolls or really clunky solutions, the only one I can come up with that makes something happen tonight. But if you don't do that, I absolutely get it. And Tiffany could be giving that message to the few people that are coming in with the request on a used bike. And I think they'll understand, okay, the council is going to address this in 2 weeks, and then I'll have my answer. And if they choose not to buy a bike or whatever in the meanwhile, waiting for that answer, that's okay too.
Our KC has already purchased it.
Yeah, and so I certainly understand that as an option, but it seems like we could also give this person the rebate, given the ordinance is what it is today, and change it before we get too many.
That would be the fair thing.
So just a thought.
Be truly the fair thing. would be-
Fair to my sense of fairness.
Yeah, you could take the position that the application was in to the town before tonight's meeting. Right? And if you do the clunky motion tonight, you take the position that application was in before the clunky motion got approved. So that one will get paid. That's a door.
Be the fair thing,
All right,
and
Steve. I think we should honor anybody who bought a bike with the rules the way they are. So I would honor that person. And then I would revisit this, but it's a little bit of a case study. We're seeing that the percent of people that engage the program have been used bicycle purchases. But it in that way, it's compelling to say that maybe it is reasonable if you're buying from authorized resellers. Now, if I was working something around flipping in between you and me on Craigslist and we're just running rebate deals, I think that's going to be pretty easy. But for me, and originally I kind of wanted to use, then we talked about conversion kits, yada yada. So I'd like to see that person obviously get a rebate, but I'm also open to keeping it the way it is without. If this is getting a person to get on the bike to knock the car or is engaging some, then that's the mission of the program. So at the very least, let's honor this one. To me, it seems a little bit.
But it would also in that regard also feel. And somebody, this guy got but I can't because I didn't get it in the fully. So I don't know, it doesn't. feel
Well,
fair.
if we change the rule, I think what you're saying, we're voting now to change the rule tonight, that from this point forward, any used e-bike purchases through an authorized retailer will not be considered.
Well, and I think it's important to keep in mind too, that we talked about this was a pilot program and we were gonna probably make tweaks. This is a lot sooner than I thought we would be making a tweak to it, but we did know that, we didn't have a playbook for this and that we might be tweaking it at some point in the future. So, Roman.
I'm in line with Steve. This strikes me as a zoning thing. Somebody puts their application in now, you can't say, well, in 2 weeks, we're gonna vote to change this, so it doesn't count, It's-
Well, no, I don't think it should be retroactive. So this person that we're talking about.
Right.
But going forward, once it's in place and then people are on notice, then that shouldn't be a thing.
Right, but the discussion also was about whether or not we're gonna give it to this person. Jared was saying, hey, you
As an option.
tell this person to hang on.
No, as an option, but what I'm hearing from counselors is that they don't want that.
If we're gonna make the change, I think we need to do it as soon as possible to avoid as much of that. It should not be that.
And to address Roman's question about expectations. If they've already purchased, whether or not they've already purchased it, I'm comfortable with saying, the change, for lack of a better word, the clarification that's getting made tonight, their application was already in and pending. And so that gives you the room and the ability, in my opinion, to honor that, that application and honor that expectation. But it's also true that probably the general public out there reads the policy and doesn't see a distinction between new and used as written. So I agree with the mayor, you need to tweak it. And it is a little sooner than you thought, but you learn by doing, and that's what's happening here.
Does everybody understand the motion?
Michael. Dwayne. Janet.
Yes.
Roman.
No.
Steve.
No.
Alec.
Yes.
Mayor Kempton.
Yes.
Okay, so Jerry and I will work with us. We'll work together to get that resolution drafted for the mayor to sign.
Yep.
And then go ahead and honor the current rebate that's in the system, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
But also tell them that
I'll let them know.
why.
Yeah,
So they don't start spreading.
So they can
the
tell
word.
their friends. that
Yes.
They got
lucky. Yeah.
Okay, and then attendance at the July 11th meeting, will everyone be here?
Tiffany, you just.
I'm skipping the All-Star game to be here.
Well, who got that?
I'm skipping the All-Star game to be here.
Could I ask you to start associating values of bikes? So a cumulative amount of purchasing value?
Oh, so on my list, how much each bike costs?
Yeah, not individually necessarily, but whatever's easiest, but it'd be nice to see.
Are you keeping a spreadsheet? I assume, so maybe we can put whatever the purchase price was. So I think there's just so much data that we're gonna be able to retroactively realize we can use that I don't think we.
Yeah, do you guys want that in my monthly report? Like 6 e-bikes costs or 6 e-bikes purchase at a cost of $12,000 total, so $2,000 each.
I'm just curious about the number of rebates and that more granular stuff, I think is sort of more interesting in a needed basis, but like, I like
Okay,
to
so
look at
just
that.
go ahead and keep the information. Roman would like to see the total value.
Yeah, and my intention is to further the argument of adjusting the rebate values to encourage invalid purchases, because just using the average REI value for an e-bike, that's $9,000, that's like that without. Yes, we get some sales tax out of it, but yeah, just further information.
Yeah, so data points, source of purchase and cost of purchase.
So there's been 6 bikes sold, as of the report, there were 6 bikes sold and all of them are. Your bike, yeah.
Hold on 1 second. So right now,
I gotta sell a
I do
motorcycle first.
I do the cost of the e-bike. I say purchase from where, the type of the bike. Yeah, and then rebate amount when I issued it.
When you put type, the categories are.
I I can't determine if it's a class 1, 2, or 3 e-bike by the receipt. I'm putting in hay bike, city run electric bike, 7-speed.
Hay bike,
Hay bike, it's a brand.
HEI?
HEY.
No.
Yeah, hay bike, Mars electric bike.
Is those one town guys too?
No, but
Five of those. have
Tim
ones.
and
Oh,
our
so,
cleaners, Tim and Margaret. bought those, I believe.
yeah, yeah, they're Mount City residents and they bought them and then they got their rebate for them. And they just got them up today and we're writing warrant.
One segment, I did have a conversation with some town staff who didn't know about the bike program or that they qualified. So I don't know if it hasn't.
Who was that?
Circa.
Maybe it's the rest of the.
I will remind everyone that they qualify.
Okay, does anybody have anything else for Tiffany? Tiffany, do you have anything else for us?
No, thank you.
Okay. No, we did that. Did you have a question?
I'm just curious if I stepped out for 30 seconds, but
it was pretty quick. But we can go back if you have a question.
No, I don't. It's just usually it lasts more than 30 seconds. That's all.
Nobody had any questions. So
We talked about.
Fireworks are go.
woohoo!
Yeah, all right.
Is that the way you got them to come instead of us to between them?
What's that?
Is that the way you got them to come is for us to do? the-
Well, that was just one of their stipulations. So I guess, I mean, it wasn't a deal breaker. They're like, hey, we need this, this, and this. And we're like, sure, that's no problem. Do that anyway. It was really narrowing down the site. And we got the site. We got permission for the site. And we found out we don't even need permission. It's down right way.
Really?
Yeah.
What permission was from CBMR?
No, it was from the owner of the Battle Ridge. That's where we've always gotten permission from, but it's a new owner. And the fireworks company was supposed to do all that. They didn't, so then it fell to us, and so that's what we
They
did.
just come in, make a mess and wait.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be worth it though. We go forth. Whether.
All right, town council reports and discussion items. Anyone?
Looking forward to the July parade and Deer and Chili. They still have not been able to tell us about this awesome band that we're trying to contract with. But we're getting closer to the day they have to say yea or nay. Man. Do you think we could be that lucky? You already
This is for Deer and Chili.
Steve, we're in council reports. So. Anyone? All right. So next thing is executive session under town code section 3-31 subsection 7 and CRS 24-6-4024B and E for a conference with the town manager, town attorney, and appropriate staff to receive legal advice and instruct negotiators concerning the Nordic in development. So I move to go into executive session under town code section 2-31-2 and CRS 24-6-4024E and F for a conference with the town manager and appropriate staff. Was premature, just because I have 2 scripts for discussion for town attorney.
Yeah, the motion you read will work for the Nordic Inn. If somebody wants to, if you made that motion.
Yeah,
That,
so
that,
I'm going to go
Nordic
into, yeah, I'll try this again. I retract what I said previously. I moved to go into executive session under town code section 3-31-7 and CRS 24-6-4024B and E or a conference with the town manager, town attorney, and appropriate staff to receive legal advice and instruct negotiators concerning the Nordican development. I further move to return to the open council meeting at the conclusion of the executive session to take any actions deemed necessary. So the motion to go into executive session from myself and a second from Dwayne. Any further discussion? Tiffany?
Ellen,
Yes.
Michael.
Yep.
Dwayne.
Yes.
Steve.
Yeah.
Roman.
Yes.
Janet. Mayor Kimpton.
Yes.
Okay, so Jerry, I'm gonna end this Zoom call and we'll go into the other one I sent you.
Okay, I'll log in.